you are on this perfect night for a virtual meeting as opposed to a meeting in a cold gymnasium somewhere. We have a very large crowd. There's a significant amount of interest in this project and has been since its inception. So tonight is an opportunity for people to review the plans and see some new elements of the plans that have been added since we last got together. I should add, this is not the last community meeting that will be held on this proposal. We've been consistently trying to get the public engaged in various formats, large and small, virtual, in-person, and hybrid. And we'll continue to use the best format that's most appropriate for the period of time that we're in this process. And tonight, as I mentioned, for a variety of reasons, not just the weather, the virtual format was preferred. And based on the response that we got, a large number of people agree, because we have many people participating tonight, both as observers and as commentators, and I'll get to that in a minute. The purpose tonight is actually twofold. This project was first proposed to us back in September of 2021, and it has evolved significantly and undergone numerous changes since that time. So the main reason for tonight's meeting is to see where it's at, to see the current status, the most recent revisions, what the next steps may be in the development design, and to continue to get community input, which has driven this project all along. So that's the main reason. The secondary reason is simply to allow people to go on the record for their opinions. Most opponents have been very vociferous and clear, communicating to my office over the past couple of months, if not longer. And I just want to tell you all, we have heard you. We read all the email. We're very much aware of the significant and growing opposition to this project from many people in many different quarters. But they all, including many who have signed up tonight, wanted the opportunity to say so in a group setting, publicly on the record, at a meeting like this. So tonight's your chance. At the end of this meeting, we will have a public commentary period, and everyone who wants to go on the record and state their opposition and their reasons will have 2 minutes to do so, and we'll stay here and listen to all of it for as long as that takes. Now, having said that, there's also some supporters here tonight. We've seen your comments as well. You're outnumbered, and I think you know that. But I admire your courage in coming on visiting territory tonight. You're not the home team. But this is definitely a project that's generated a lot of interest from both sides, and we're not done yet. This is also the point in a meeting like this where I stress, as I always do, no decision has been made. That's what this is about. This process is about leading us to a decision, and we are not there yet. So all the input that's being gathered, all the responses that are being prepared by the development team factors into that final moment when a decision is made to either support or oppose this project. And we have a ways to go before we get there. And tonight will be one more chapter in that book. Now, having said that, the opponents, again, have made it clear they needed this moment, and we're glad to provide it. And many of you are quite passionate in your opinion. But as you state your opinion, I do have to appeal to you to please be civil about it. No profanity, no need to scream and shout. You want to make your case and you want to be persuasive. The best way to do that is to present a rational case and to do it in a civilized fashion. We don't always do that in public meetings anymore, and I think we all agree that we've suffered for that trend. So let's not do that tonight. Let's go in the opposite direction. And the people who have strong feelings about this, please express them, but do so respectfully. And when someone who has a different opinion, when it's their turn at the microphone, please respect them and be polite as you wish them to treat you. So I'd also like to thank the Old Town Merchants and Residents Association for co-hosting this meeting with me. They've been along since the first inception as well, carefully monitoring this on behalf of the membership that they represent. And Pam Farley is here to make a few opening remarks before we turn it over to the development team. Pam?
Hi, thank you, Alderman Hopkins. I just want to say I'm Pam Farley, the current board president for the Old Town Merchants and Residents Association, and we're happy to co-host this meeting with the Second Ward Office and Alderman Hopkins. Our goal is to facilitate a dialogue about this proposed project among the many stakeholders who care deeply about the Old Town community. And we want to listen and share what we hear so that everyone feels that their voice is heard and that their opinions are, thought about. So if you don't, for whatever reason, get your question answered here tonight, or you still have more thoughts after this is over, please feel free to contact the OTMRA office, and we'll do what we can to get you any information about this proposed plan. And just to let everyone know, the OTMRA has not taken a stand on pro or negative on this. We are here facilitating a dialogue. So thank you very much for that. Thanks for showing up and being part of our community. And now, Nick.
Yeah, Pam, before we get to Nick, you reminded me of something I forgot to mention. We are soliciting additional feedback and questions at the end of this meeting. As Pam mentioned, everyone who registered for this meeting, immediately upon the conclusion of this meeting, check your inbox. You're going to get an email from us. It's in the form of a Google Doc soliciting your opinion, your thoughts, additional feedback, and specific questions that you may have now or questions that may arise during the course of tonight's presentation. The reason we're doing it that way is because at the conclusion of Fern Hill's presentation, when we go to the public comment section, simply time is not going to allow for an interactive dialogue. We have so many people who have signed up for their 2 minutes of comment. We can't take that 2-minute period and turn it into an interactive discussion back and forth. That will be unfair to the people who are, at the end of the queue, so to speak, for public comment. So any questions that you have, we would ask you to use that document that you'll get at the end of this meeting to ask, or you could put it in the Q&A chat feature, which is enabled. We'll be monitoring that throughout the course of this webinar, and we'll be able to respond to any questions that come up, whether they're directed to my office, OTMRA, or Fern Hill. We'll be looking at that Q&A feature. But when your turn comes after the conclusion of Fern Hill's presentation and you signed up in advance, you get your 2 minutes to say whatever you want, make the point you want. But any questions you pose, we won't be able to interrupt to answer. So you'll have to submit those at the end of the meeting. Thanks for reminding me of that, Pam. And now I'll turn it over to Nick Anderson.
Okay, Alderman, thank you. Let me share my screen. 1 second here. Okay, can everyone see it? Can I get a thumbs up from? Can we see the presentation screen?
We got you.
Okay, great. Okay. Hide this. Okay, well, welcome everyone. My name is Nick Anderson with Fern Hill. And I would like to thank the Alderman Hopkins and his staff for hosting this meeting and the opportunity to hear from you all later tonight. So on behalf of the entire project team, which includes designers at GRAC Architects, our zoning council at DLA, and our traffic engineers from KLOA, I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening, and a special welcome to all of the Old Town residents and surrounding community members in the Gold Coast and Lincoln Park, as well as any city departmental staff that may also be joining us on this call. So thank you all in advance for your time, and a warm welcome to everybody. So like the Alderman said, our goal tonight is to provide a comprehensive update across what are 6 project subject areas for the project. The first half addressing project updates specifically on design based on the community feedback. We're going to specifically address zoning context in this presentation, and then discuss some of the various development massing suggestions we've received from the community. The second half of the presentation will cover broader, more macro neighborhood topics, including traffic, safety, and community benefits. And there will, again, also be a public comment section following the presentation finishing. So just a reminder, and this may be old information for many people, but since we have so many people on the call, for context of process, we're kind of entering the 4th calendar year, technically, of the community process, which started back in the fall of 21. The phase 1 introduced the opportunity and identified stakeholders that wanted to be a part of this process with us. The second phase endeavored something very different, which was a fully public, fully open source project website which is served to share information, collect direct comments and feedback, and allow neighbors to engage not only with us, but also engage with each other through a fully public message board. So our neighbors have shared over 2,200 written comments up to this point, and we've had over 20,000 page visits to this successful trial. All of this early work set the framework for the last 4 phases, which have included a series of public meetings, some in 2023, and now as we enter the new year. You know, what you told us matters, and we appreciate the opportunity to listen to the neighborhood, the challenge and problems you're facing, and to think about how this proposal can both incorporate neighborhood feedback on project design, but also find ways for us to identify and come up with creative solutions on broader, again, more macro neighborhood improvements, especially around traffic and safety. So first of the 6 topic areas we'll cover tonight, we're proud to showcase the most current design projects, design updates on the project. Before I reintroduce GREC to go over these designs, I just want to take a quick moment to reiterate that the most important part of what we're trying to do with this engagement process is to ensure that everyone's able to have their own independent opinions from the same factual and accurate information. So we have seen, by example shown here, some redistribution of our designs that make our proposal appear taller or out of context. We don't know, and we're not accusing this of being intentional or accidental, but either way, we just want to make sure that this type of information is not unfairly confusing anyone's personal assessment of this presentation tonight. So in the event you've seen conflicting information out there, please use all of the public information you receive from us directly and post it on our public website or shared in these public meetings such as this one. So, and if you ever have any questions on the project, anyone can always reach us directly at oldtown@fernhillcompany.com. So with that, I'm very grateful for this opportunity to show you our designs tonight. I will introduce you to Don Copper, who is a founding partner at GREC Architects. He will go over the current architecture and design of the project specifically, and the progress we've made since our last community meeting last September. So Don, I will hand it over to you, if you can unmute.
Yes, thank you, Nick. And thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. I want to say on behalf of GREC, it's a pleasure and a privilege to be working on a notable project in your neighborhood. Longtime Chicago resident, and Old Town has always been near and dear to my heart. We do believe that it is a real privilege to be able to work in your neighborhood. Let's start with where we were in September and where we have come since then, since we heard feedback from the neighbors. On the left, we are showing the scheme that we presented in September. I want to point out initially that nothing programmatically has changed. The building height, the number of units, the number of parking spaces, and the Walgreens tenancy as the primary retail on the southwest corner have not changed. But what has changed from your valuable input is how we can make the building a little bit more compatible with the aesthetics of the neighborhood. In September, we showed a cooler color palette in this sort of mosaic design concept. And we believe the feedback that we needed to do something that was a little bit more compatible with the colors in the neighborhood was super valuable feedback. So we have adjusted the palette to be a little bit warmer, which relates to Lincoln Park, obviously, the Moody Bible Institute and its masonry and all the beautiful masonry in the neighborhood. And there's actually, if you look closely in your neighborhood, there's actually a lot of beautiful color going on from all of this sort of arts and crafts history of the neighborhood. Another comment that we heard was that the base level be more warmer materials and more tactile, which we have decided to connect the east and west ends of the project with a brick expression, which you'll see more closely in future slides. And then we decided to solicit community input for the street level facade articulation, particularly on the Wells Street side, as it relates to the adjacent townhouses where the food and beverage outlets are, as well as the Piper's Alley facade across the street where Second City is. So these are the adjustments we have made, which we'll get into greater detail in the next slides. So just to go back a little bit, you've probably seen this slide before, but we wanted to remind you how we're looking at the context from, let's call it from 30,000 feet. There are a number of towers in the immediate adjacent area along the lakefront and along Lakeshore Drive that are all estimated around between 400, just under 400 to just a little over 400 feet tall. And on the next slide, you'll see that our project, oh, there we go. On the next slide, you'll see that we're keeping our project, the height of the tower will be consistent with those neighboring towers. And laterally, that is distance from one tower to another, we've located the tower in a location where it is least intrusive in terms of existing views and in terms of space between structures in order to keep a certain level of privacy, urban privacy, if you will. On the next slide, next couple of slides, you'll be able to see the building in context. This is from North Avenue Beach. We believe that the scale and the location of the building is in keeping with all of what has been built in the last 50 years in this area. We also think that this kind of indicates that the new color palette of the building is consistent with at least the autumn trees in Lincoln Park. On the next slide, you'll see a comparison from the History Museum of the original color palette that we presented in September and how we have adapted that. And then the next slide is a close-up view of that perspective. So we think that in that sense, excuse me, that's my dog. In that sense, we believe that the project is consistent with the context of the existing towers. So let's get down to the actual neighborhood experience and the pedestrian experience. On the left, you see the Moody parking portion of the project. The actual articulation of that building hasn't changed much. We've refined it a little bit. We think that we've given it better proportions, but I think most importantly, what we heard from you was how we need to bring more life to the pedestrian experience. So we put the entrance to the residential building at the west end of this portion of the project, where you can see the 150 address number. As well as the client has committed to putting a retail space on the corner. So now this entire block will be anchored by retail at the east and west corner, as well as the residential entry that you see there at the address. And then in the next slide, you can see this is a comparison with the existing condition, which is a surface parking lot. But we think that most importantly, we want to describe to you what we've done here is once you're outside of the footprint of the residential building, you can see that we've stepped the facade back about 8 or 10 feet. which turns a 17-foot sidewalk into more like a 25 to 28-foot sidewalk width. And we intend to provide landscape planters, which hopefully will enhance the experience both of the residents who live here as well as the neighborhood pedestrians. This is another overview on the left side of the photo, which you'll see in greater detail in future slides. You can see how we have taken the red brick expression for the full length of the block, which we'll see better in the next slide, I believe. So yeah, again, on the left, you see the existing condition, which is although nicely articulated brick wall, there's really not much energy brought to this pedestrian experience here. Whereas on the right, which is our proposed articulation, the Walgreens will be open to the sidewalk. And this is also where we have brought the masonry materials, both a dark brown stone at the bottom and a red brick piers along the sidewalk, which we think is a significant improvement over the existing conditions. Here's a close-up view of that. And then the next image, when we go to the Wells Street side, the west side of the block, you can see our September proposal on the left side, which again, the residential building is metal at the grade level, and all of those cool colors on the tower portion have been shifted to warmer, more contextual colors for the current proposal. Also, a lot of you participated in our online survey about how we could articulate this facade, which the goal here is to keep this portion of the project in scale with the rest of the buildings both across the street and on our side of the street that are existing and sort of characteristic of the Old Town urban texture. And so from what we originally proposed in September, we refined that to what you're seeing on the right-hand photo based on neighborhood input from that online survey. And if we go to the next slide, we'll see that in greater detail. And we intend to employ we call them the frog lamps, but those historic lamps that used to be on the west side of Wells Street and now live on the facade of the Walgreens. We intend to reinstall those as part of this story. We think that the scale and the brick modulation of this part of the building is compatible with the Corcoran's building, et cetera, as well as the buildings south of North Avenue on Wells. And then I'm going to turn it back to Nick to talk about the zoning overview. Thank you.
Okay, Don, thanks very much. Appreciate the design updates. And the second section, we're going to transition and actually take a step back a little bit and put these renderings in a more macro context relative to the lakefront and historic zoning overlays, as well as existing zoning of our surrounding neighbors. So, and again, the point here is to give as much information to the community as possible to make your own assessment on the project. And there are two important zoning districts that run through the Old Town community. One is the lakefront zone, which stretches the entire 10-mile north side lakefront through a dozen unique neighborhoods from Streeterville to Rogers Park. The second is the Old Town Triangle, a historic landmark district. What these two districts show, similar to every single neighborhood community along Chicago's lakefront, is that the character and scale of Old Town is a diverse and unique melting pot, if you will, of both low-rise and high-rise buildings, as well as historic and modern building typologies. This aerial perspective further demonstrates the same point, that the change in scale between the eastern wall of the park fronting high rises in the lakefront zone versus the western low-rise neighborhood zone is distinguished. Importantly, with respect to our project, no property in this proposal falls inside the historic landmark district, and the proposed tower is fully within the high-rise lakefront zone east of the line that you see here. So again, just providing that context. What we also want to do is put this zoning context, zooming back into the project at scale, and distinguish all of the various properties that have elected to each be a part of this planning process. So at left is the existing PD 89, and that encompasses Piper's Alley and Walgreens. The participation and consent of all properties within this current PD is required to allow Walgreens to redevelop its store and be a part of this proposal. East of PD 89 is the current surface parking lot on LaSalle and the BP and the Shell gas station, as well as the Moody Church, including their 3,200 seated historic sanctuary and newer administration and education facilities to the north. So in total, this project represents 4.5 acres of net private land area. And the elective cooperation between this number of private owners is frankly unprecedented. And it is what has led us to be able to unlock substantial planning flexibility and community benefits that independently couldn't be achieved. So we hope the community can appreciate that. To take this same perspective a little further, the development proposal would consolidate all of these separate properties into a single master planning process and establish sub-areas as shown here. So the proposal is based on an underlying zoning classification under the City of Chicago zoning code known as a B3-5. And importantly, this B3-5 zoning is the same current zoning of both Americana Towers and 1660 North LaSalle, shown in this rendering to the north of us. By sub-area, the -5 zoning will set limits by ordinance to both the density, including maximum unit count and square footage of this planned development. And by comparison, the proposal is actually 17% less dense than the density of the existing Eugenie Terrace plan development, which is actually at a 6.0 density, as opposed to the 5.0 density of the underlying B3-5. So again, just in the interest of transparency, being open book on the proposal here and the underlying zoning. But we know that the underlying, zoning of the PD is not the most discussed aspect of this project, and we recognize it is the taller tower, which we're proposing to locate in the sub-area B highlighted here. So before we talk about massing options, again, we want to reiterate the themes of the past few slides. First, that we're not located in the historic landmark district. Second, that our proposed tower in sub-area B is entirely located within the high-rise lakefront district. And third, the proposed density, both square footage and unit count limits of this planned development are based on the same underlying zoning and existing zoning of both Americana Towers and 1660 North LaSalle, which is a B3-5. So with the zoning context in mind, we wanted to shift back to the really internal ideation process of how the development team considered the massing options once we committed to a single tower as a part of this project. So again, shown here, the proposed contextual massing of our proposal and our 3 existing neighbors, all located within the lakefront district. These four buildings would range between 390 and 420 feet together. Our proposal is directly contextual in this height, trying to be fair with respect to equal tower spacing, as Don previously mentioned. And for a sense of scale, as shown here, each tower is roughly 300 feet apart from the other, which is about the length of a football field. Now, this is a very important slide, and we're going to spend a little bit of time on it discussing these options because they have advantages and disadvantages. Of note, probably most importantly, is that all of these options are the exact same density. They are the same unit count. They are the same square footage. The only difference between these plans that is shown is the shaping and orientation of the tower. So option A on the top left is our proposal, which is a 390-foot tall building. This option is based on a roughly 13,000 square foot floor plate with a 12-foot setback from Wells Street. Alternatively, option B on the top right decreases the floor plate average from 13,000 to a little under 10,000 square feet. This is a thinner building. This increases the building height about 6 floors, but thins the tower, allowing for a larger Wells Street setback. And of course, a thinner tower comes with a thinner shadow and has lower impact on views. Both option A and option B also attempt to respect the southern view corridor of the two south-facing units in 1660 North LaSalle to our north. And while these views are not guaranteed, both of these options make an attempt to set back from that southern view corridor, which we know is important to those residents. Option C on the bottom left is really the polar opposite of option B, which is to extrude the footprint all the way of the tower from Wells Street across to LaSalle in a very large floor plate. This has the effect to reduce the building height, which benefits the views of maybe 15 or so high floor unit owners in surrounding condo buildings, but conversely impacts the views of any unit owners located below roughly, say, the 25th floor in the surrounding buildings. The shadow impact is most pronounced in option C as well. And lastly, option D on the bottom right is taking the above option B and simply shifting the tower massing all the way east to be proud on LaSalle, actually in line with 1660. This shifts the tower away from Wells Street and orients the thinnest southern building profile to maximize the total southern view as a percentage. However, the tower encroaches closer to James Kilmer Condo Association and restricts the eastern view corridor of Americana Towers towards the lake. So we are not saying that any one of these options is right or wrong, and everyone in the community can certainly have an opinion on any one of these options. But we did want to show that we've taken into account the pros and cons of all of these types of considerations within our current proposal. And that's what we've landed on with what's been proposed that Don went over earlier. It's not because it's the only option, but because we feel it's the best option to fairly balance all the priorities in this community and surrounding neighbors. And we hope that you can all see the thought and logic that we've applied to this proposal to minimize those impacts. So now that we've covered project updates, design, zoning, and context development options, we wanted to shift to more broader community concerns around traffic and safety. And we're going to start with traffic. So we want to talk about traffic to update the community with specifics based on the site plan shown here. The combined property strategy with all of these properties working together maximizes the flexibility of the site and is the best way to maximize pedestrian safety and also organize traffic. We engaged KLOA, which is one of the largest traffic engineer firms in the country. They are based here in Chicago, to analyze this proposal and this specific site plan. That study and a traffic demand management plan will be made public following CDOT's review. But some of the preliminary traffic and pedestrian observations can be summarized, in this simple site plan. A few points to make. Number one, there are no curb cuts on Wells Street, and there are no residential curb cuts on North Avenue. The pedestrian, not the automobile, have been prioritized in this project on these important pedestrian corridors. To improve traffic, the existing Walgreens loading dock is proposed to be moved away from LaSalle and into the middle of the site. And the only new curb cut is located on the farthest northeast corner of LaSalle, where it is accessed off of a 4-lane major roadway with more than sufficient capacity based on the technical analysis of KLOA's report. So following on these numbers and this data, the report estimates that the project residential units would create a little over 50 additional site visits on average per hour. That is less than 1 per minute by average. And while we do add this limited new demand, that is also within the existing capacity of LaSalle Street. And this increase is actually fully offset by the traffic stops that will be eliminated by the removal of the 2 gas stations to the east, which include today a dozen curb cuts cumulatively, and comprise over a staggering 250 feet of linear curb cuts, allowing vehicles to cross the pedestrian sidewalk way. So again, demonstrating the power of this master planning process, this proposal in effect provides a net positive impact to traffic. To handle this limited 1 car per minute demand, the project is reserving a greater than 5,000 square feet off-street circulation area shown in green on the left here. This area will serve to consolidate both delivery trucks and also ride-sharing services. It is directly accessible to the lobby fronting North Avenue. And by comparison, just again, I like putting things in scale. This, what is often called a porte cochere, is roughly the same size and dimension as the existing porte cochere at the Waldorf Astoria on Walton Street in the Gold Coast. So a huge amount of real estate is required to accommodate this type of off-street circulation facility, and only possible in a combined master plan project, which again continues to demonstrate some of the practical benefits of developing these sites together. And then in addition to the residential project, finally providing a dedicated parking facility, even at 300 spaces for a 3,200 seated sanctuary, will eliminate this demand from the neighborhood, which is currently put onto public street parking and third-party garages. So this is 300 less cars circulating through the streets looking for parking, and it's 300 less families and Moody Church members, walking what would be longer distances, often members, including elderly, young children, or persons with physical disabilities. As well, the combined project allows the garage ramp to be located within the tower footprint, and therefore the building rendering you see above here is 100% flat floor plate structure. Why that's important is that if in the future we ever arrive at a driverless future, this future proofing allows Moody Church to potentially convert this building from parking to an alternative use, like expanded church facilities or office space. So this is not physically possible if the parking garage is developed independently. Beyond the scope and scale, and frankly, our authority of this project, the community has expressed interest in exploring ways to improve some of the broader traffic issues throughout this neighborhood. each of these areas shown above with, Wells Street's pedestrian and bike traffic, LaSalle's commuter traffic, and Clark Street's institutional demands from Latin, History Museum, and the Moody Church all have different factors driving traffic concerns at each of these three different intersections. We're committed to working with the community, the aldermen, and the Department of Transportation in any way that we can be helpful in assessing or implementing solutions, to this traffic. By example, one of the problems that, to explore includes the rush hour bottleneck of the right-hand turn from LaSalle onto North Avenue, shown here in red. Also shown in yellow, there is street parking along this entire corridor, starting just after 1660's front door and continuing along LaSalle and North Avenue and through Wells Street intersection. Another idea, to remove this bottleneck is to increase the capacity of westbound North Avenue by moving the current CTA bus stop west of Wells Street. We don't know if this has other intended consequences. We haven't studied it in depth enough, but it may create a de facto right turn lane onto Wells Street, thereby eliminating at least one of these bottleneck events that's creating this longer peak traffic drop-off. Another bottleneck event would potentially be improved by eliminating some or all of the street parking previously shown in yellow on the prior slide, such that the southbound lane of LaSalle would pick up an additional lane going from 3 to 4, and the North Avenue westbound lane would pick up an additional lane going from 2 lanes to 3 lanes. So we're not saying this is the solution, but we certainly think it's worth study and consideration. So in terms of practical improvements, again, we're here to support the community and the city agencies on this assessment. And anywhere where we can provide ideas or execution of any of these strategies, we are here again to support these improvements. So shifting to neighborhood safety. So again, we want to talk about neighborhood safety, which we know is near and dear to especially the alderman's heart. Probably nothing more important to him than the safety and well-being of his constituents. But as real estate developers and owners, we can support the police either through kind of reactive processes after a crime has been committed, but we can also invest in resources which are proactive and address decisions to harm before a crime is committed. And so again, we're focusing on what can we do through this project to change the decision to harm before a crime occurs, and then obviously continue to support and provide resources to the police and the 18th district. So in terms of the decision to harm, we think that the built environment has a huge impact on criminal behavior in a neighborhood. And questions like how visible or attractive do targets appear? What are the chances of being seen? And if seen, will anyone intervene? These are all assessments of the built environment. And so our opportunity is how do we change the answers to these questions when they're asked before a crime is committed. And we believe that through our project, it is pretty clear that replacing gas stations with faith-based community resources and structures, replacing surface parking lots with grade level retail, replacing curb cuts and driveways with 24/7 attended luxury residential lobby is a hugely positive impact. As well, replacing the blank, albeit articulated brick walls of North Avenue with engaging active retail, replacing outdated retail with modern amenitized retail, and featureless street walls, including the cinder block openings of the Treasure Island structure with open active storefronts, again, are all beneficial to the assessment of the neighborhood and safety of residents. And lastly, we focus on leasing, frankly, all of the vacant storefronts in the neighborhood. We could not be more grateful that Walgreens decided to be a part of this project and that this was the right time to redevelop their current store alongside our process. We're glad to put them on a path to modernize their store while keeping their important services, including pharmacy and health facilities, available to this community. As well, before the holidays, you may have seen, and we're excited to announce a partnership with the Commissary Market to move their recently closed store on the Gold Coast to Old Town and allow them to expand their grocery products and services in a much larger facility. We also continue to have active discussions with large-scale grocery stores who I know are listening into this presentation tonight as well, and eagerly track the progress if a larger economic reinvestment and additional discretionary incomes will be coming to this community. The proposed project moving forward is critical for their decision to also invest and expand in this local community. And here's a perspective rendering of the Old Town Treasure Island building. This is not a part of the plan development boundary, but we know is a critical component of the community benefits we provide. And we look forward to working with our partners in the 1660 Condo Association on the design of this structure in the very near future. And just another rendering showing the reinvigorated Wall Street corridor with the Commissary Market grocery store shown at the southern end of the project. So in closing, we hope that you have a much better and deeper understanding of the design direction based on community feedback, the contextualism of the zoning parameters and zoning overlay, and the choices with respect to massing and development strategies we've deployed in this project. So we also hope you value our commitment to exploring traffic and safety and other community benefits as we've outlined herein. So we will conclude the presentation, and I will hand the wheel back to the Alderman staff for public comment. Again, we will be posting this full presentation on our website at engagefernhill.com. And so you can share and redistribute this presentation for anyone that may have not been able to join. And again, as always, if you have any questions, the development team is available to respond directly. And you can find us either through the website or at oldtown@fernhillcompany.com. So again, thank you for your time. And we really do look forward to listening to all the public comment hereafter.
Thank you, Nick. Okay, we are now going to move to the public comment portion of the meeting. Any meeting participant who indicated the desire to speak on his or her meeting registration will be called on by the name they have registered under. Remarks will be limited to 2 minutes per person. Due to the high number of people who wish to speak, this time will not be used to have questions answered. Questions can be submitted in the Q&A text box, and we'll answer those via text as they come in. When 2 minutes have expired, we'll move to the next person. So with that, first person who pre-registered to speak is Hunter G. from Sandberg Terrace. Hunter, you should be able to speak shortly.
Hi, everybody. I think I'm unmuted. Appreciate the opportunity to give feedback on this project. As Brian mentioned, I'm a condo owner in the Alcott House of the Sandberg Terrace, just south of this project at 1460 North Sandberg. I am strongly supportive of this project. I think that the new housing will promote housing affordability in the area. The people that live in that housing will be customers for the businesses in Old Town and surrounding areas, which is critical in a time of increasing e-commerce. A lot of these local businesses are struggling, so I think this will be a key benefit of the project as well. I think it's the building itself, what's proposed on the site is much more attractive than what currently exists there now, with the kind of underutilized, single-story retail, the parking lots that are not pleasant to walk by as a neighborhood resident. So that's another key benefit. And then on an ongoing basis, the property taxes generated by this project will support various public services like public transit, our schools, and all the other things that our city and other public agencies do for us on a daily basis. It's critical to allow these projects to happen so that those entities can continue to fund those services and improve all of our quality of life. I think this project is a win-win for Old Town and Chicago as a whole, and I really hope that it moves forward. Thanks for the time.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Fari H. from Lakeshore Drive.
Yes, hello. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity. One thing that I would ask, if you kindly ask the speaker to identify whether they are renter in the neighborhood or they own property, because that makes a difference. I don't think I need to go through the detail of how this huge project is going to negatively impact all of the residents, owners in the neighborhood. In your presentation, you showed how you are accommodating the 10 right from, Wells, or 10 right from the LaSalle to North Avenue and all that. But how is North Avenue going to take all that traffic? This project is going to affect the quality of our life, whether it's noise, whether it's the traffic, whether it's the increase in the crime, whether it's the drop in the value of our property, and so forth. I end with this question. I'm asking if we really can trust those who are in a position to have the guts to think really carefully how this would impact the neighborhood, the quality of the people that they are here. We don't have much of a room. If you go through North Avenue, tons of businesses have closed on North Avenue. And then there's going to be another huge project on the corner of North Avenue. And I believe it's Halsted, or the old Bank of America building. That's going to be another 400 units. Why can't we go ahead? There are a bunch of lots around here. Why can't you just move this project if you are thinking of low property units, for low-income families? So consider that, please. Thank you so much for the time and opportunity.
Thank you, Fari. Next up, we have Steve P. from Dearborn.
Brian, we're going to go to the next speaker. I do not have Steve on the call at the moment. Steve, please raise your hand if you are, and we will get to you next.
Next speaker is Steve F. from LaSalle. And for everybody's reference, this list is in the order of those who registered for the meeting and indicated a speaking preference. Do we have Steve F?
Steve, you have been invited to speak. Please go ahead and unmute.
All right, maybe we can come back to Steve. Mary Jo P. from Sandburg.
Hi, I'm here.
Please go ahead.
Can you-
Yeah,
Hello?
we can hear you, Mary Jo. Go
Oh,
ahead.
thank you.
Thank you.
I have a few concerns, like the previous question asker. I don't believe that the traffic is going to get any better. I think North Avenue is jammed up already. And as she suggested, turning to the right, moving the bus stop, doesn't make any difference. And it doesn't also matter how much space you put in front of the building to park cars or for Uber. Between the Amazon drivers, the post office, the packages, everything that comes through, Between North Avenue, LaSalle, and Clark, they're already jammed up. So you can put 30 spaces out there and there'll be 40 cars or 40 trucks and people parking everywhere. It just sounds like a mess. I too don't agree that we need another high rise to be included in Old Town. I think it will diminish the properties. And I don't believe in the other project going down by Halsted and Clybourne either. There's plenty of spaces that can be built on that won't block prime views and that won't go 400 feet. I'm in Sandburg Terrace. I get it. I'm in a tall building. I'm not in one of the tallest, but it just doesn't make any sense. None of it does. And Walgreens going back in with Fern Hill sounds kind of goofy to me. They were totally against it. I don't know how you talked them into changing, but I appreciate the chance to express my opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary Jo. Next up is Sarah Kay from LaSalle.
Brian, Sarah is not on the call at the moment. We should go to the next speaker. And just as a reminder, anyone who has been called on already who has not had the chance to speak and unmute yourselves, please go ahead and raise your hands.
Gary S. from LaSalle.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, Gary. Thank you.
Okay, early in the 90s, the area that Fern Hill wants to build their tower was downzoned. And the reason it was downzoned was because the people of Old Town wanted to keep the character of Old Town and not build any more high rises after Eugenie Terrace was built. This was strongly supported by the neighborhood, and evidently the city went along with it. What I'd like to know now is, apparently Fern Hill has to come in and seek a zoning variance. What burden do they have to overcome? We haven't seen anything that they can show that actually comports with the reason that the area was downzoned. They're just coming in and looking to create a variance and disregarding everything that was done for very specific reasons. And the thing that they are looking to do benefits 3 institutions. All it benefits is Moody, Fern Hill, and Walgreens. And all of this is at the expense of the people of the community. It diminishes property values. It creates a big traffic problem. We all know what the reasons are. They're going to be discussed again. But building a 400-foot tower is completely incongruous with what the intent of the downzoning was and what Old Town stands for.
Thank you, Gary. Next up, we have Kathleen C. from State.
Hi, I live in the Gold Coast at North Avenue and State Parkway, and I'm concerned that my neighbors in the Gold Coast are not aware of this development. As presented, it will negatively impact us. While we do need the area to be redeveloped, but not this. The traffic congestion, the fallacy of the plans presented tonight is that the lobby entrances on North Avenue, rideshare, Amazon drivers, food delivery, etc., will block North Avenue, dropping off. Likewise today, even the Walgreens had drops off and picks up, etc. Traveling north on LaSalle, before North Avenue, you have to go west on North Avenue, then north on Wells, then east on Eugenie, then south on LaSalle to get into that parking lot. Density will add congestion. Apartments drive a more transient neighbor. We need something that's going to allow people to put roots in the neighborhood. It's going to change the character of the Old Town neighborhood. The colored fins, even as of today, are abhorrent. Just because there are high rises does not mean we need to have more. This is too tall, too wide. We need option E, which is less height. and less length along North Avenue. You know, I find it interesting that there's never a picture of what this will look like straight on, you know, from the front, from across the street. This building reminds me of an office building downtown. And in summary, this project just needs to be reduced in height, length along North Avenue, and the density. Thank you for allowing us all to speak.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. Next up is Linda Kay from Wells.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. I represent residents in Americana Towers condominium. And we've had many discussions and attended all of these meetings, presentations. And we have similar concerns that have just been voiced about the huge density, the hugeness of the building, the traffic concerns, the pedestrians on the street, the turning cars, the deliveries, the drop-off delivery vehicles. We all know what it's like now since COVID. Everything, all the residents want vehicles, want their items to be delivered. The pictures of the presentation are very pretty. They're very nice. But the reality in life of how it will affect everybody that already lives in the community is really questionable. We really don't trust it. We think our quality of life will change. We think the neighborhood will change. It doesn't respect the essence of Old Town. Old Town is a village community, a creative, artistic community. We are here because we love that aspect. It's filled with low-rise and vintage properties. And this building does look like a downtown office building. It's just not right for the neighborhood, and it's going to really negatively affect all of us who have set roots in this neighborhood. It will affect us all greatly. So we're just really appalled at what's being presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Steve F. from LaSalle.
Steve, you have been permitted to speak. Please go ahead and unmute yourself if you would like to provide public comments.
Okay, sounds like maybe Steve's having some technical difficulties. Let's move to Diane G. from LaSalle.
Hi, thank you very much for allowing me to speak. Nick, I have a question for you. I know you can't answer it today, but perhaps you can post the answer. Based on all of the feedback that you've received from the neighborhood, could you please give us 3 suggestions made by the community that you have adapted into your plans? You can't use grocery store because that was the come on at the beginning. The other comment that I'd like to make is nobody has talked about the traffic on the one-way street Eugenie. When you come around North Avenue, turn on Wells, you've got to get back to the side of the building if you're coming from the south. People will either cut through the parking lot at 1660 or go all the way around to Eugenie and then come around to your entrance. That's going to cause terrible traffic jams. And the last thing that I want to say is I'm very disturbed by moving the building so far to the west. I am on the southwest side, and you have completely cut me off now, cut off my whole view. Either center the building or make it lower or something else, but you've moved it all the way to the corner, and now you've cut off everybody on the southwest side. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Diane. Let's move to Linda A. from Sandberg Terrace.
I'm gonna ask about 24-hour Walgreens, but they can't do anything about that.
Hi. Thank you so much.
Linda,
I'm in favor of this project. I think the neighborhood looks very sad around there right now with the gas stations and the old Walgreens side and the parking lot. And I think this would really improve it. I think the drawings are very impressive. I love the coloration. I like the option B too. I think that's very nice. And as regards community involvement and development and benefits, one of the things I think would really help Latin School is they do their big graduation events and so forth at Moody Church, and they need more parking for this with all their family and friends that come in. So that additional parking for Moody Church would really help Latin School and other groups that use that big auditorium. So the only other thing I'd like to say is, as regards safety, I didn't.
Well, I think we lost Linda. But Linda, thank you for the comments. And if you want to finish up and you come back, please just raise your hand. We'll try to get back to you if we can. Okay, the next speaker is Gita K. from LaSalle.
Yeah, hi. We own the property 2 doors down from the proposed project. It is the single-family home at 1622. As of now, to get out of our driveway on any Friday or any afternoon, it could be 15, 20 minutes. The traffic is so congested in this corner. I don't know how this new project is going to alleviate that. We will never be able to get out of our driveway, and that will bring our property value crashing down. No one is going to want to live in a house where the driveway is the end of the driveway is so congested. The building is too tall. It'll affect our views. We are a single family home, and we'll have this huge building right to the south of us. So I don't know how the traffic is going to be. And if you're going to have this little pull-in driveway on LaSalle, then all of your delivery trucks are going to back up in front of our home. So I don't know how many trucks you can go in there at any given time. And the crossing on North and Wells, even now, is dangerous because people make a turn from the center lane to the right lane. And I don't know how that will get any better. If anything, it'll be more dangerous to the pedestrians. We are opposed to this very tall building. And, I know there's other tall buildings, and that's what Fern Hill says, but we don't need another 400-foot building in this space. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gita. Next speaker is David B. from Wells.
What do you have to do?
It comes on.
I'm a resident and owner, and thanks to the Alderman and Fern Hill for soliciting and actually listening to an unprecedented amount of feedback on the project. My concern is about congestion. You've done quite a bit of work thinking through this. Thank you. But I think you're far from a solution. I appreciate the priority was for pedestrians, but the issue is really vehicles, not pedestrians. I think that focus needs to shift. And I personally don't believe traffic studies. They always show there's a small impact, but we know commutes are taking 20 to 50% longer. It's impossible in my mind that this could be a net positive on traffic. Bump outs for pedestrians dramatically reduce vehicle flow, so I don't think that's going to help the project. And what I'd like to see is the math of your assumptions. And Nick, you referred to a couple of them that was helpful. I think there's a lot more, and I'd love to see them. Like, for example, the number of vehicles per hour, or the average time to progress from LaSalle past Wells and North, and vice versa for today versus after the building is completed. What are the assumptions for traffic flow at the LaSalle entry to the building? With cars coming out into the traffic lane, it has to slow the turning of the traffic. I can't imagine it wouldn't do anything else but that. What are the assumptions for what I call chain reactions? If a car cuts off another coming out of that area or in front of Walgreens, somebody jams on their brake and it's a chain reaction of delays. All those assumptions should be modeled. I would like to see that because I think the net impact on the traffic is going to be way worse than what you've shown. Also, North Avenue at night on weekends is a parking lot. What are the assumptions of the traffic flow with the new building? Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you very much. Diane G. from Menominee.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay. Okay, good evening. I'm Diane Gonzalez, a resident of the Old Town Triangle Historic District. Come June, I will have lived on Menominee Street for 50 years. First of all, thank you, Alderman Hopkins, Nick, the Fern Hill Group, and all of you for coming out tonight, even though it's a Zoom. Secondly, I am opposed to the project. Years ago, after Eugenie Terrace was built, Alderman Chuck Bernardini, it was about 1998 or 9, as I recall, he sought and gained downzoning. We were thrilled. We had formed a group before Eugenie Terrace called Old Town Citizens Action Committee. We worked to have that high rise unsuccessfully moved, and that we didn't succeed, as you know. But I have to tell you, all those folks who worked so hard on that would be absolutely appalled that this is reoccurring. So, you know, we didn't want this dense development, and our historic district and our low-rise neighborhood, very important to us. And so to think tonight that we would support a zoning level that we worked so hard to discard years ago. Fern Hill will build this dense, tall building and you will leave. You don't live here. This isn't your neighborhood. This is a way of life for many of us, 50 years for myself, and many others have been here long, long term. To think of this neighborhood that's so meaningful and it's home to all of us would be, have this new building, I should say, stuck in our midst. It's just unacceptable. I mean, it's actually preposterous to think that we could support upzoning when we worked so hard to downzone. So thank you.
Thank you, Diane. We appreciate your comments. Tim C. from LaSalle is next.
Good evening. I have basically 3 comments, and I think many of you have probably seen the letter to the editor to the Skyline newspaper that I outlined many of my concerns. I encourage you to take a look at it again. And I also want to mention that on December 5th, many of us attended a meeting organized or co-sponsored by the Old Town Triangle Association at the Moody Church. And we went through a whole traffic study with Nick Anderson. And those of us who have asked for that Zoom call to be made available have been denied. So I make a request tonight. I would like the alderman to require the posting of that Zoom call from the December 5th. There was considerable community reaction given at that meeting, and it suddenly just poof and disappeared. Now, there were technical difficulties that people were not handed a microphone, but that's not an excuse for not posting a community meeting that was held. And secondly, on the timeline that Nick has provided, that December 5th meeting was nowhere on the timeline. So nothing about this process has been very transparent. It's been highly irregular. It's been outside of the typical zoning process. And I also want to request more information about where all these development entitlements are coming from this 5.0 floor area ratio. I want to see that the planning department has reviewed these numbers and they agree with them, and the city law department, frankly. And finally, I would like the alderman to summarize for us the level of community feedback that he has been given by email, by letter, by phone call, by conversation, by letters to the editor. I mean, it is time for our alderman to step forward and save our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Next up is Ken L. from Wells.
Ken, you have been permitted to speak. Please go ahead and unmute yourself to provide public comment if you wish.
And if you're having a technical difficulty and you're able to figure that out, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll try to come back to you if time permits. Next speaker is Caroline P. from Deming.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yep, hi. My name's Caroline. I live not too far north of this development in Lincoln Park, and I'm really excited to see more housing being built, just given how popular Old Town is as a neighborhood, especially since it's within a couple blocks of the Cedric Brown Line stop and several bus routes, so fewer residents will need to drive. Even for those who do drive, they don't have to drive very often. Personally, I'm grateful that I live close to transit, and even though I do drive, transit allows me to drive significantly less. Again, I'm really glad that more housing is being built because before I lived here, I went to college in Minneapolis, which has been building so much new housing that rents have remained relatively flat since I graduated nearly 3 years ago. Keeping rents affordable by building new housing helps people like me. I'm a young professional who's currently a renter but would love to buy someday, and keeping rent stable will help me save for my own home. This development also fits well within the context of the surrounding community since there are lots of tall towers within the few blocks of this development. If you have a problem with dense developments, you should not be living in Old Town since density is what makes the neighborhood. We would not have the great restaurants, shops, and other businesses we have in Old Town without plenty of residents within walking distance to support them. I'm also very hurt by the second commenter tonight's insinuation that renters negatively impact the quality of the neighborhood and her attempts to tie us to crime. Remember that we're people too, and many of us want to buy eventually in or near the neighborhoods we currently live in. All of you who are concerned about transiency should remember that by opposing this development, you are supporting housing scarcity, which means rising rents and even more transiency as people like me are pushed out of our homes and cannot save to buy someday. In closing, I want all of you to think about who you were when you were 24 years old, which is how old I am. You probably were figuring out where you wanted to be long-term and starting to save for your first home. Maybe you found Old Town or the surrounding area and decided it will be for your forever home, or maybe it took you some time to find it. Your opposition tonight denies people like me the ability to get to the places you are now in life as homeowners. Why can't I not have that same opportunity?
Thank you, Caroline, for your comments. Next up, we have Jamie C. from LaSalle.
Jamie, you are live on the call. Jamie C., please go ahead and provide your public comments if you wish.
Okay, we will move on to Tommy T. from Concord.
Brian, Tommy is not on the call. We will go to the next speaker. Again, as a reminder, please raise your hand, and if time permits, we will go back, circle back in order to try to accommodate you.
Charles L. from Wells.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. One of my first comments, I just have a couple here, is that I think it's time that we hear from Alderman Hopkins on some of his views. I know, Alderman, there's a project going on at North and Clybourne, and you've spoken publicly about some concerns you have over there. I'm not sure why we can't start hearing from you on maybe some of the concerns or any of your views on this project. Secondly, I am an avid bike rider, as you are, Mr. Alderman, and it is dangerous out there. I just saw your transportation portion here, and there's no bike lanes being put on North Avenue. That is insane. I'm on Wells. I ride down Wells all the way to Chicago Avenue, and you have no idea how many Uber drivers and ride shares are parked in those bike lanes and how many times I've had to avoid being hit. It's ridiculous. As far as the density, that is insane. You have talked about Eugenie Towers, which is a rental building. No owner lives there that is concerned about any views or any densities. They're living there in rent. And I'm not against renters, as the other girl may have maybe thought what that was. But it's not. You said nothing about any impact at this building at 1636 North Wells. we feel in this building, we have been left out of any concerns. And finally, I don't think transient rentals is the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. We are going to go to Ken L. from Wells.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for your time today. And I'd like to thank the Alderman and Fern Hill for reaching out and getting so much community feedback. I'm currently 28 years old in Old Town, and I plan to have my kids in this neighborhood and live in this neighborhood for many years to come. So I think I have, in a lot of groups' opinion here, a lot to lose from this project, but I couldn't support it more. I think we need more density in our neighborhood. And frankly, on Wells Street, north of North Ave, there are, I think, 8 empty businesses up to Clark Street. I think this building would really revitalize the neighborhood and help support more local businesses. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ken. Next up is Nell and or Jim W. from Wells.
Hello. You guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so Alderman Hopkins, good to see you tonight. I know a lot of people stopped by in the last couple of weeks, month to see you. Strangely enough, they couldn't. I'm a little concerned because this is a very critical issue for this area. You represent all the people, not just Fern Hill and Moody Church. If no decisions have been made yet, which is what you started this presentation with, then why are we only looking at the Fern Hill presentations with a 36-story building? Why is it's not even zoned for the Fern Hill design? I'd like to also advise how many more supersized skyscrapers will come to Old Town after you rezone, turning this into a glass and metal canyon. The one view where you showed it in the middle between the two towers, put 3 or 4 more in there, or however many more are going to line the lakefront. It's going to change Chicago forever. That's why they had this rezone back in 1998, which is what somebody said. The huge traffic problems are an issue. It's going to cause parking, bike lanes, scooters, Lakeshore Drive access to park, the beaches, density of people to the area. 1 lane only on Wells. I mean, come on, really, you got to be kidding me. It's tough as it is. Why is Fern Hill doing all of the presentations and your office has not had any public hearings before this stage of the game? Why are we now showing the last final pictures rather than talking about this at the beginning, what the possibilities are? I do have one more question. Walgreens apparently will have a drive-through in the Treasure Island pass-through. That's going to be completely insane. Allegedly, it might be 24 hours. And again, streets cannot support any additional traffic. 1 lane on Wells, all these different directions. If you got that little bump out curve, people double park as it is. People go around. People can do U-turns. It's like this is going to be a mess. I apologize. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Barbara W. from Wells.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'd like to point out, I feel like the perspective that Fern Hill has engaged with the community on the creation of this development, it feels not quite accurate. At every meeting, attendees have spoken in strong opposition to the immense size and density of the building. Although it's said that this project has been talked about for over 2 years, it wasn't until September that a plan was actually revealed for comment. And in that plan, it didn't seem that Fern Hill had even attempted to address the feedback they'd received. The only option they put forth was a massive 500-unit high-rise tower. So now to pretend that they've listened to the community because they changed the color scheme and offered other configurations of a 500-unit building seems disingenuous. They have still not addressed the major concern, which is the immense size and density of the project. Why is the only option being presented a building with 500 units? Is this a development for the benefit of the neighborhood or for the developer? Chicago Square was a good development. It was a beautiful building in a location that needed it. This development is neither. This tower, it's not right for the neighborhood, and it's more detrimental to it than of benefit. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Sneha S. from Wells. Good. Is that right? Sorry, Sneha, just clicked it. Go ahead.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Okay, so I'm Sneha. I am a homeowner and resident at 1636 North Wells. I'm 25 years old and I have a lot of concerns with this development. First being, as a lot of people have said, the congestion. It's already such a busy, chaotic intersection. I'm really worried that having this many people in that small space is just not going to work out. And I understand that Chicago needs more housing, but this is not the place to develop it. Also, it's pretty upsetting that this huge high rise would be a rental building. So we won't be able to have people in the community have ownership. It's going to just be like a huge corporation renting out units. Also, I find that it's kind of upsetting how building this unit or building this this high rise, it's going to block off Corcoran and it's going to ruin the historic feel of the neighborhood. Also, I also just think that if we want more housing, we should make it possible for people to own rather than rent, because when you own, you're here for a lot longer and you have a lot more commitment. I will say, living here, I do feel a strong sense of community, especially because there have been so many lifelong residents. And so I really hope, Alderman Hopkins, that you take this into account and you protect our quality of life, because we do have a wonderful community here, and I really hope we are able to continue living a very healthy and positive and safe life. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next, we have Corrine S. from Wells. I'm sorry, from LaSalle. Corrine, you are allowed to speak if you want to go ahead and unmute.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, good evening. A number of years ago, we've already heard, then Alderman Charles Bernardini, with wisdom and integrity, downsized this very proposal site after a tower to the north, a couple blocks north, was built, and said enough was enough in recognizing Old Town as a truly special village to be protected for its quality of life, historic preservation, architectural relevance within and at its gateway of LaSalle, North and Wells, and its core of homes, shops, and entertainment, thriving to the benefit of its residents, tourists, and city's commerce as a result. Despite that history, we're now faced with a developer's proposal of a tower at this tiny site, befitting instead Fulton Market or Las Vegas. A tower adding 500 residents to area density and congestion in accessing our streets. A tower defying the city's call for bicycles with 450 cars to further stymie traffic flow and access in and out. A tower diminishing the adjacent buildings' values for their owners and the city's resultant revenue. And a tower requiring Walgreens placement for 5 years or more in the middle of 1600 North Wales residential district to operate 24/7 with no noise abatement plan or security plan for the safety of residents during its late night and early morning hours of operation. Where are the benefits for our community? Alderman Hopkins, won't you now recognize Old Town as a unique village to be protected and preserved for all time by emulating Alderman Bernardini's integrity in fulfilling allegiance to your constituency and deny Fern Hill's proposal and zoning change? We're counting on it, and we deserve nothing less. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Corrine. Next up, we have Barbara L. from Wells.
Hi, I am a resident of Americana Towers and have been for about 45 years. When this project first came up, Fern Hill wanted to be a good neighbor and sent out questionnaires, asked people what they wanted. I haven't heard anything on the feedback that they got. And I think, let's face it, this high rise was in the works, in their minds at least, long before we were told anything. And the one reason is money. That's the bottom line. It's money. Can they make more money at 36 stories than they could with 15? Yes, double. So that's Fern Hill's motivation. As a lifelong resident of Chicago, I realize no zoning change happens without the blessing of the alderman. I'm sorry, Alderman, that your office is so far away from Old Town, 1400 Ashland, different neighborhood. The traffic on Wells Street, one lane in each direction, is impossible. It's impossible to go south. It's impossible to go east, to come around, to go onto Lakeshore Drive. Eastbound traffic down North Avenue, to get onto Lakeshore Drive, the left turn lane at LaSalle Street is so backed up that even on a green light, it blocks traffic on Wells Street going south or going east. So the amount of traffic that this is going to bring to Wells Street at a one lane in each direction, from what I understand, people, I came a little late, people will have to go around to get into their parking and come down Wells Street.
Thank you, Barbara, for your comments. Next, we have Alec S.
Right? Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, my infant daughter is in the background, so I apologize for any overlap or any extra noise. So I'm a renter. I noticed there's been a lot of anti-renter comments. We're transients, we don't belong in the neighborhood. Perhaps it's easy to say that when you own a home that has increased significantly faster than the rate of inflation. For renters, we don't have that same luxury. So there's 100 affordable units in this development. That's amazing. The rent will be somewhere between $1,000 and $1,400, depending on the unit size. That's guaranteed by city code. So that will be fact. Compare that to about $2,600 a month for market rate rent. Great place for artists to live is affordable housing. Unless 100 homeowners on the call are perhaps willing to sell their houses at significant discount, or maybe they're willing to pay more in property taxes for the city to fund affordable housing. Maybe that's a solution. But, I just wanted to say I'm pretty frustrated to hear a lot of this kind of sentiment. The city is being investigated by the federal government for blocking affordable housing in high opportunity neighborhoods. I think that's important context to keep in mind with a development like this. People who work at grocery stores like me, we deserve a place to live. And we deserve to live in nice neighborhoods, despite what some of the people on this call may say. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Alec. Next up, we have Ratnika P. Ratnika, are you on the call?
Brian, that speaker is not on the call at the moment.
Thank you. Next, we have Nadine V. from LaSalle.
Nadine, you have been permitted to speak. You can go ahead.
Hi there, appreciate it. I came into 1660 as a renter. I moved to Chicago to sing with the Lyric Opera years and years ago. And I've been a proud member and an owner at 1660 for over 20 years. So I understand renting, I understand ownership. The thing I love about our neighborhood, and many of my neighbors, Nancy Gonzalez and all of us that have been on here, understand the historic value of our neighborhood. I owned a waste hauling company. I worked at Chicago Housing Authority, and I worked at the city of Chicago. I understand all aspects of environmental, of zoning, low-income tax credits, etc. And I don't think Fern Hill's been transparent with us. If he had any intentions of building a grocery store, we'd already have it. This thing will impact us greatly. We have a lot of great renters, by the way, at 1660, but we also have traffic issues. We have high crime issues that have not been addressed by our aldermen. We have all of our businesses that have been impacted recently. Stringer Strand, the robbery's there. Galleria Winery, robbery's there. I wish our aldermen would pay attention to the community and what we really need. We're not insulting renters here. I started here in this building as a renter and as an artist and as an environmental person, an entrepreneur. So aldermen, listen to the community. We'll find someone that will. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadine. Next, we have Peter S.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Terrific. Hi, everyone. I grew up in Chicago. I'm 40 years old. I've lived in Chicago most of my life, and I strongly support this development, and I want to share 3 reasons why. First, we're in a period that the mayor has recognized as a climate emergency. This is a building in an area that's well served by public transit. Supporting this development is a strong step towards making sure Chicago develops in an environmentally responsible way. And resisting new developments like this, your transit is a vote for more driving, more traffic, more bad air days, and an overall worse environment in the future. Second, Chicago is famously going through a budget and pension crisis. New developments are a critical method for raising tax revenues without increasing the tax burden on current Chicagoans. Supporting new large housing developments like this is a way to preserve critical services without further tax increases. And third, and maybe most important, the evidence for what will happen if Chicago continues to refuse to build new housing is plain to see by looking at other US cities. Generations are being priced out of New York, San Francisco, and Austin, among many other places. We have one group of people on this call, those supporting the development, who are arguing that it would be good if more people could afford housing, and another group of people arguing that the city should try to keep housing expensive. I hope people will reflect on that, given that we're in a time of rising home insecurity and homelessness. If we want to make housing secure and affordable for future generations, we need to build in all neighborhoods in the city and quickly. For these 3 reasons and more, I strongly support the proposal, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Margaret O. from Stanford Terrace.
Brian, Margaret is not on the call at the moment. We can go to the next speaker.
Butler Adams.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm out of town, so I'm doing this long distance. My name is Butler Adams. I am in favor of this project, and I personally have been following it for the past 2 years. Yes, we just got a rendering last summer or last fall, but I am in favor of this project. And from listening to a lot of the comments, it's a big generation gap. It seems like the older people, the boomers, are kind of against it, talking about home ownership and traffic and density and stuff like that. And a lot of the younger people are in favor of this project. Personally, I am in favor of the project. The architecture is pretty nice. I think this new design, new rendering is an improvement from what we saw at the first public meeting. That being said, just to address some of the things people have said, why is this a project not a condo building? Well, right now it's very hard to finance condo buildings. Developers have to pre-sell half their units before they can get financing. And right now, condo buildings aren't doing good downtown or in the city as a whole. Rental units are. Last I saw, as of right now, occupancy for rental downtown is 93.6%, very, very high. Over the next few years, going to have very, very low delivery of new units. So it's going to keep crushing prices higher and higher. So I agree that we need more units in the city. This project is not too dense for the area. It's not too dense for this corner. You have high rises all up and down this area. That also being said, the neighborhood as a whole has less people than it did at its peak population. So we keep hearing things against density and height and blah, blah, blah. Chicago is the city that invented the skyscraper. And the neighborhood itself has lost people over the years. So the city and the neighborhood as a whole needs to replenish its population. So I do hope the alderman is in favor of this project. I know he wants to get as much feedback as he can, but sometimes he has to go against what the people want in the neighborhood. I know that some folks are against this project. Unfortunately, personally, I think it should be built. I think it should be built. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Butler. Next up, we have Stephen M. from 1660 LaSalle.
Hello?
We can hear you, Steve.
Oh, thank you, Brian. Thank you, Alderman Hopkins. My name's Stephen Maserlian. I'm an 18-year resident of the neighborhood and currently serve as board president of 1660 North LaSalle, which is the building high-rise just north of the proposed tower and across the street from the BP gas station and Moody Church. Thank you for putting this meeting together. We appreciate it. Alderman Hopkins, at the September 26th meeting prior to Fern Hill coming out with their proposal, you had said Old Town is a great place to live. We don't want to screw it up. We want to make it better. You then went on to say that it is our job as residents to make a decision based on what we see if the Fern Hill proposal does make Old Town better. So after that September 26th meeting, us as a board of 6 members decided that rather than making a decision based off what we thought, why not canvass the entire association, which is around 471 units. What we did is we put together a survey of all of our residents to gather feedback on the proposal as it was presented at September 26th. In total, we had around 380 respondents, which we sent you the results along with hundreds of resident comments. As you know, based on the feedback we received from our residents, we stand strongly opposed to this development. Some of those issues that we feel this development will bring are as follows, a lot of which you've already heard tonight. The density of the area adding 600 to 700 residents, traffic, which I know you've heard a ton about, I don't need to go into. The historic transformation of the neighborhood, the safety of pedestrians and bikers, the parking issue, Walgreens occupying the Treasure Island space and potentially for 24 hours, and then construction for 2+ years, if not even more. All of this having a detrimental effect on our quality of life. So my question is, how does any of this make the neighborhood better? And if it does, for who does it make it better for? I'll answer that. Fern Hill, yes, it does. Moody, yes, it does. Walgreens, yes, it does. Possibly some of the businesses. I don't know, but I would suggest if you haven't, maybe check with some of the businesses and see what their true feedback is in the neighborhood. But I ask, what about the residents of the neighborhood? How does what is being proposed make the neighborhood better for the residents, your constituents? This all comes down to one simple thing, which has been brought up by a few already tonight, one of which was a major part of this change, and that is the zoning. The zoning change that would forever change the historic landscape of Old Town and open up the floodgates for other developers to do exactly what Fern Hill is looking to do. As I look around, I look at a bunch of different buildings in the area that built within the last 5 years or so, and none of them are a monstrosity that this is. Okay, so they were able to build and keep it in line with the historic landscape of Old Town. This is zoning that was relied upon when people bought in the neighborhood. So as far as I'm concerned, this change in zoning is the tipping point for the destruction of Old Town as we know it. I'll add a few more things. I believe, Nick, I don't know if you did it mistakenly, but you mentioned us as partners, 1660 with Old Town, with Treasure Island. I do have to correct so people know that we are not partners at all. I don't know if that was a mistake. And another point I'll make is, Fern Hill sent an email on January 9th claiming all these association meetings and meetings with different organizations. And yes, they have met in certain levels with association members and boards. But I think everyone needs to keep in mind that this tower and this actual development, the development as a whole, was not proposed to us until September 26th, so less than 4 months ago. And I'll close with this. Alderman Hopkins, the community absolutely needs more details. We would like to get detailed plans. We need times to study and give input. No development should take place until we understand how all the property will be used, including the gas stations. We'd love to know the timeline. When will this be presented to the Plan Commission? And we hope to get a commitment from you that nothing will happen with any time soon. Lastly, and I'll finish with this, at the September 26th meeting, you also mentioned that this zoning decision is consequential decision that will have a long-lasting impact on our community. And I will have to say, yes, it will absolutely have a consequential decision, and that we as an association have never been able to secure a meeting with you, Alderman Hopkins. We have also tried in conjunction with surrounding associations to meet with you in person. After this meeting, we will be requesting a meeting with you, which we hope you will grant us. Thank you.
Noted, Steve. Thank you for your comments. Let's go to Betty L. from Sandberg Terrace.
Good evening, everybody. As you said, my name is Betty Latz, and I've lived in the area for over 40 years. and currently live in James House, where I've lived for over 36 years. I want to say that I thought the presentation was very interesting and very detailed, and I appreciate it. I will wholeheartedly agree that we need a development in this area, but I would like to say that there have been a lot of concerns that have been raised, and I won't repeat them, but I think they have a lot of merit. I just have two questions to ask that have not been discussed this evening. One is the building's coloration and the material that would be used. It looks, very beautiful, but I think a lot of us have been concerned about how that lasts over time. Are the materials that are going to be used materials that won't deteriorate? That could be an eyesore in a few years. So that is one concern. The second is, I heard this evening that we're talking about taking away neighborhood parking. But I will tell you, there is no neighborhood parking right now. So when you want to go to the cleaners very quickly, if you want to go to Walgreens, I mean, we hardly have parking. So I don't know how this development helps everybody. I'm not sure how much of the parking space is going to be available to people in the neighborhood, but that ability to go in and out and get your chores done, that is going to go away. And it's, this neighborhood is lacking in that kind of accommodation. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Danny W. from Kyler.
Hi, everyone. I got to be honest, I'm pretty disheartened listening to all of this, and I get that no project is perfect, and there are trade-offs, right? Someone once said there's no solutions, there are only trade-offs, and I'm just listening to this thinking that I love this city. I wish I put something in the comments that Lincoln Park used to have a population of 102,000, and right now it's at 68,000. So the idea that we're dealing with some unprecedented level of density that will overwhelm a neighborhood is, I think, really out of touch with the historical context. Second, I understand people who, could lose a view or feel like traffic could be, or parking might be a little bit worse for doing an errand or two, but I'm looking at this whole country and this housing crisis we have across this country, and it's because of meetings like this. It's because we used to allow places to build, and not all the changes were positive, but you could just get a home. You could just get a home. You could have a courtyard apartment in Chicago. You can't even build those anymore. Basically, across the city and across this country, we have people with good intentions objecting to every last little detail of every single project. And in the process, it makes it harder and harder and harder to build. If you look at any research on the amount of housing development that's been done, it has cratered over the last 20 or 30 years, specifically because of zoning restrictions. And the end process is that people are housing insecure. There is greater homelessness. There are people who would like to downzone after their kids go to college, but they can't because they can't even find a place. So we live at a time where we prioritize so much above just allowing more space for our neighbors, not just those who would benefit from the subsidized, more affordable units, but even those who called in earlier saying they love to live in this area. And I hate the disparagement of those who are renters. As someone I've owned 3 homes so far in my life. I'm a homeowner, but renters are not second-class citizens. So anyway, I strongly support this project. I understand people's concerns. The benefits greatly outweigh the costs. I listed them in the Q&A, and I hope people will reconsider some of their understandable, but I think in many cases misguided opposition. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Danny. Next up, we have Emily H. from Clark.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily. I currently live in South Loop. I used to live in the area, but unfortunately moved out for a more affordable option. I'm 24 years old. I recently moved to Chicago just 2 years ago, and I hope to have the same sort of life that everyone else in this meeting that have lived in this area for decades has. I want to be able to buy a home, and I want to be able to make roots here. I don't want to have to be a renter for forever. But the only way to get to that point is to be able to build housing. So I'd like to ask the people who currently live in the sky rises, who currently live in the 34-story housing towers that are currently opposing this project, how is it fair for us to approve your housing, your building, and not approve this building? I would love to live in that neighborhood again. I would love to be able to be there and afford that neighborhood again, but I cannot. Um, Additionally, a neighborhood is made of people. It's not made of parking lots or gas stations. This project will revitalize the area. It'll bring income to the businesses that many people are concerned about in this meeting. And it'll also bring in more tax revenue to our area. Currently, I don't believe that a parking lot is bringing enough tax revenue that a big skyrise would be able to do. And also lastly, about traffic congestion, there are far more people in Old Town who walk or take a bus than drive. You can look up those statistics. There's more people who take the CTA than people who drive. So I just want to remind you that you are not in traffic, you are traffic. So if you are concerned about congestion of a project, I would recommend taking your time to improve CTA service, improve bus access, and improving bike lanes. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Next, we have Michael M.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alderman Hopkins, for having us on, and Brian. Really appreciate you all staying so late. I have a few reasons why I support this project. So the first one is this project's going to bring 500 more homes, which means hundreds of new customers to the businesses of Old Town. New places where you can shop, new places where you can get your haircut, lots of new restaurants. There's a lot of unseen benefits that you don't see right now that you will have in the future. The second reason is more neighbors means more tax revenue for the city. I own property right now, and I don't know about you, but I pay a lot in property taxes. The key way for us to stop property tax hikes is to increase the tax base, meaning we bring more people into Chicago who pay more tax. The third reason that I'm in support of this is this includes 100 affordable units, which is critical housing for people who work in this neighborhood. I just want to read a headline for you. Chicago wrongly limited affordable housing with aldermanic prerogative, Housing and Urban Development says. Feds say giving council members a local veto over proposals to build affordable housing has meant it's rarely, if ever, constructed in majority white wards that have the least affordable housing. This is a catastrophe. Like, we need to have diverse neighborhoods where people, like, anyone can live, anyone can shop, anyone can work. And the last reason for the reason why I support this is a sustainable development. It's near 4 bus routes, bike lanes on Wells. There's lots of sidewalks, 2 L stops. Density is the #1 way that we can live car light and car free, meaning less traffic and more people can live green, sustainable lifestyles. Thank you so much, Alderman.
Thank you, Michael. Next, we have Joe B. from Wheeland.
Brian, Joe is not on the call. We can go to the next.
Alex C.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right. Well, first of all, thanks, Nick, Brian, Ward 2 staff, Alderman Hopkins, for your time. I'd just like to say that I really support this project and projects like it in the area. I think especially when you look at it in that full rendering of the skyline, it makes a lot of sense. It's a worthy addition to an already very vibrant neighborhood. And from a pedestrian level, the masonry, the sidewalk extensions, the landscaping looks great as well. I'm a car-free resident of Chicago. I spend a lot of time, especially on Wells, be it on foot, getting there by transit, or on my bike. I'd love to live closer to some of my favorite restaurants down there. I also think that the environmental and social benefits of this project really speak for themselves. It's an extremely transit accessible area, and lots of people would love to live here without adding to the traffic, which seems to be a big concern here. You can live in this apartment and not add to the traffic on the streets. I would love to live in this apartment, take the train downtown for work, walk to the VIG or to Second City. But if we block projects like this and continue to let people who already live in these neighborhoods put up walls around them and prevent new residents. I just don't know how that's a benefit to the city, a city that's growing, especially downtown recently, and like previous people have mentioned, has sustained much larger populations in these neighborhoods historically. So I'd just like to say that this project looks fantastic. I hope to see more of them in the ward and in the neighborhood. And thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Lisa W. from LaSalle.
Lisa, you have been permitted to speak. Please unmute yourself if you would like to proceed with public comments.
All right, we're going to go ahead and move to Anthony C. from Menominee.
Hi, thank you. I am a resident and owner here. I've lived here for 15 of the past 20 years, moved away for a few years and came back. Like the neighborhood so much. I just want to say I broadly support the project. We need more housing in the city. Would like to see the tax revenue in the city. People are concerned about traffic. Just like to remind people, this area, especially that corner, has a very, very high walkability and transit score, both in the high 90s and a good bike score. And to address some of the issues about illegal parking, we can see increased enforcement, which also might bring some additional revenue into the city in parking fees. There are already high rises on the block. It struck me when I was coming home today, walking from North and Clybourne Red Line. There already are a large number of high rises on that block. And I think more pedestrians would be very good for our local businesses. It's been noted that there are increasing difficulties for our local businesses, a lot of vacant storefronts. If you go down to Armitage or further down north, you will find a lot of vacant stores in an area that was once very vibrant. And I would like to make sure that our Wells Avenue corridor remains a very vibrant locality. Finally, I would just like to say that I would like to see a large grocery store in Treasure Island. I think that's something that a lot of people have stated from the beginning. But I think overall, we can work to make sure the traffic patterns work. And this would be a very, very good project for our neighborhood. Thank you, Mr. Alderman.
Thank you, Anthony. Next, we will go to Mark A. from Wheeland.
Brian, the speaker is not on the call at the moment. We can move to the next one.
Clasina S. from Sandburg. I hope I said that name right.
Yes, thank you. You did. I live in the James Kilmer house right at the corner of North and LaSalle. And people have already talked about the parking issue, but I haven't heard anybody talk about the safety of the kids at the Latin school that live right across from us. It's our building where they all park. And there's lots and lots of foot traffic going back and forth across this area. And so adding additional traffic congestion to the area, I think puts those kids at risk. There's also a tremendous amount of traffic of all of the parents coming in and dropping off their kids during school hours that hasn't been addressed. And I think that's an important piece. The final piece that I want to bring in is the noise issue. When they put in Utopian Tailgate, it meant that I can't sleep with my windows open, even though I'm on the 32nd floor of that building. And so we're adding additional people in the area. There's yelling and screaming on Wells Street and all that kind of thing all the time. And Utopian Tailgate in particular, along with a lot of the bars in that area, are extremely loud. And the final thing that I want to bring up is the rental trucks. So if these are going to be rental properties, and I completely agree that we need more rental properties in the city of Chicago, and I welcome the diversity and the supported housing that would be brought in with a project like this. but I think there's a huge mistake of having the entry on LaSalle. If you could put it on the back side closer to the Treasure Island parking lot, then all the moving trucks and people moving their stuff in and out would be accommodated. But if you're putting in a, an 800 person building and then expecting 800 moving trucks to be coming in and out in the first couple of months, that's a big problem.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Next, we have Patrick S. from State.
Patrick, you have been permitted to speak. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Nick, Brian, Second Ward staff. Appreciate your time. I think I'm in favor of this development. I think the problems with traffic and orientation of things can be solved. There's quite a bit of land there to work with. But my problem that I'd like to raise is just the aesthetic of the tower portion of this development is pretty jarring, and I think that the ground level work that has been done to improve it is a nice step in the right direction. But I just would encourage the developers to push the architects that they hired to maybe take into consideration the historic nature of the neighborhood. It does look like an office tower. I don't have a problem with office towers, but as far as the nature of the neighborhood and the aesthetic that I think we all work hard to keep and preserve is being altered quite a bit by this. And I don't think the 60s were a great time. That's my opinion for architecture. This sort of looks similar to those buildings, and I just hope that that is taken into some consideration to maybe make it a little less like a vertical Thompson Center facade color scheme. So that's all I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Deborah. Deborah D. I should be more specific. Deborah D. from LaSalle.
Deborah, you have been permitted to speak. And I believe you are unmuted, so you can go ahead and proceed with your public comment. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now, Deborah. Nope. Now we lost Deborah again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I am an owner in the neighborhood, and I firmly oppose this development. Fern Hill does not care about this neighborhood and the Old Town community. Just a microcosm, just as an example. They hear the community complain about traffic. They know how bad the traffic is. What's the solution? We'll buy the 5 spots on North Avenue outside of Walgreens. And now tonight I heard they'll buy the spots across the street next to Starbucks. So those spots are convenient for people who are running errands and have cars and run into Walgreens for their prescription or their needs, run into Chipotle, run into Starbucks, get their dry cleaning. So assuming a 10-minute visit, that's 30 people an hour, 10 hours, that's 300 inconvenienced. And now if it's 10 spots, it's 600 people inconvenienced, but they don't care. They just want to mow it down and get their project built. So they say they're being transparent and they're listening to us, but they're really not. So many people are speaking out against a tower. And what do? They come back with a tower with a different color. Instead of hearing our concerns, lower density. The zoning was downsized for a reason. They compare their building to other buildings that were built 45, 20 years ago.
Kate is ready, Brian. Number 55.
And I reject any traffic study they came up with. We can't hire an independent. They're all hired guns. No one will speak out against a developer. So we can't even trust the traffic study. We need to keep Little Mayberry. And we're hoping that the alderman hears his constituents and helps us keep our community as charming as it's been. This tower will change this community forever and not for the better. They have not shown a reason to change the zoning. They haven't showed a benefit to the community or a need. So for example, if there were a lot of elderly, you need senior living, or if there was no hospital within 50 miles, you need a hospital. That's when you change zoning, when there's a real true need and you show a benefit. Fern Hill has yet to show us a benefit and a need to this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Next, we have Kate L. from LaSalle.
Yes, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. I echo many of the comments of Deb, who just preceded me. I also wanted to repeat what I heard, what I know. I've lived in Old Town for 40 years. I've also lived in Sandburg as a renter. I have lived in James House as a renter. I then moved into 1660 North LaSalle as an owner. I have seen many developments, changes. Most I am supportive of. I have watched the following buildings be built in the Old Town neighborhood over the past, I'm guessing 15 years, but maybe more or maybe less. 1550 North Clark, Clark and North Avenue, which I believe is high-end condominiums across from the Latin School. I've also watched the building of 159 West North Avenue, about 7 or 8 stories, rental. 1550 North Wheeland, corner of North Avenue and Wheeland, southwest corner to be specific, rental. 1552 North Park, rental. So we have added rental housing in the Old Town neighborhood, and not one of these buildings or developments is more than 9 or 10 stories maximum. So I have a problem with building a tall tower. Then my second comment that I want to add is that I applaud the Moody Church.
Ready, Brian.
Pardon me? Hello?
You're still on, Kate. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I want to say that I believe the Moody Church is part of the ambiance, culture, diversity, culture, etc. of Old Town. However, I have a problem that, in my opinion, the whole development is because they need parking for their constituents. I realize they have a 3,200 seat auditorium. I applaud they fill it on Sundays. I can tell you they do not fill it Monday through Saturday. I have a problem with 300 parking places in this tower for one entity, the constituents of Moody Church. They've been parking all over Old Town for as long as I've lived here. So if they really need that parking that they want to have for their people, that's their prerogative, their benefit, they can do it. But they own the land of the surface parking lot. I would recommend they take care of the parking, build something that's appropriate, looks good in the neighborhood, like it's an extension of the church. Why do we have to add all this tower stuff? So case rest, and thank you everyone for your time and giving me a voice.
Thank you, Kate. Appreciate your comments. Stephanie M. from LaSalle is next.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I moved to Old Town probably almost 10 years ago, and I fell in love with it because it was a rare place in the middle of this great city that had a real tight-knit community. Like the community in Old Town is unlike anything other. And after listening to my neighbors' comments, I realized that I have to thank a lot of my neighbors for this because they've worked so hard, like with their grassroots efforts to control zoning to keep our neighborhood being this very, very special place. So thank you, neighbors. And I have no idea what it takes to change a zoning, but I mean, zoning is in place for a reason. And the fact that the neighborhood wanted that, I hope that that's not something that's changed easily. I have some issues with, I'm concerned that the neighborhood would be affected in a very negative way by bringing in that many units. I hear my other neighbors who are hoping to move to the area and are concerned about affordable housing. So if everybody's really concerned about affordable housing, I guess I don't feel like this is the right project because this project is a luxury apartment building. It's going to have 100 affordable units as proposed, but if Moody and Fern Hill honestly care so much about affordable housing, why not just put 100 affordable housing units and keep it smaller in scope and more in line with the neighborhood and not put in an extra whatever 400 or whatever luxury apartments that the neighborhood does not need. Yeah, I mean, they feel like all of my neighbors have raised a lot of very good points with the traffic. The street parking is insane. Trying to park on the streets already is terrible. And I find it laughable that Fern Hill is proposing taking away street parking as part of their way to help with traffic. And I also agree with my neighbors that the traffic on Eugenie and cutting through the garage area of 1660 is just going to be terrible if they put the entrance on LaSalle as proposed. There are just so many major issues. So I hope that all of this is rethought. So thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Stephanie. Next up is Michael G. from LaSalle.
Hi, thanks for having me. Condo owner, resident of 1660. I firmly oppose this project as defined for the fellow millennials who seem very concerned about housing and perceive generational warfare. A high rise in a neighborhood surrounded by other high rises with a traffic problem isn't the solution you want it to be. Before 1660, I rented for 5 years at Eugenie Terrace. Rent wasn't affordable, my neighbors were loud, rent was increased, and I promise you, I was no closer to home ownership when I moved out than when I moved in. There are better answers. This isn't it. Feedback has been really clear from the people who actually live here, the people who vote here, people who invested in this neighborhood not to make a buck, but to raise a family, enjoy their lives, and be part of a community. I'm not going to belabor the community's concerns. I instead want to address the part of Nick's presentation I found particularly disingenuous. Specifically, stop with the straw man that your response to community input was about color scheme or where a bus stop is located. Community input has been the same since day one. No high rises that bring 1,000 residents, 40 floors, and everything comes with it. Your four alleged options all bring a building, a size, and an obstacle this community not just opposes, but cannot sustain. It's ignorant and manipulative to suggest 500 people are on this call because they care about brickwork. Nick, you acknowledged at the last meeting a building with a smaller footprint doesn't meet your investors' requirements. You bought up the land anyway, despite not having the zoning. So for some reason, you seem to think you're holding all the cards due to a refusal to discuss foundational opposition. Maybe you are holding the cards. Good luck. To Alderman Hopkins, I imagine few issues can get 500 of your residents on a Zoom call. You've run for re-election unopposed twice now. I really genuinely appreciate you hearing us. I look forward to you representing us and acting on our behalf. When I walk to the ballot box in spring 2027, I'd hate to be blighted in my own community.
Thank you, Michael. Amy K. from Burton.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Alderman Hopkins and staff, I know that this isn't an easy task for you and it's impossible to make everybody happy in your job. So I appreciate you taking the time to listen to our concerns. I'm not going to belabor, every single thing that you've heard tonight. There are a number of concerns about the traffic situation. Based on my review of the traffic studies, it seems like they haven't taken into account the additional developments that will be occurring on Wells Street that have been slated for construction. One of them is the hotel that we were supposed to have in 2022, then 2023, and now potentially 2024. And there's also a development slated for the parking lot, carriage parking, which will also result in the demolition of the old Canella building. So I think that when you look at Wells Street, and I live on Wells Street, you have to take that into account because Wells Street becomes a bit of a parking lot at night. I moved into the neighborhood when I was 26 years old, through, being one of those millennials that doesn't buy a lot of avocado toast. I somehow managed to scrape up enough money to buy a home with my partner, now husband, when I was 36. It's not easy to afford a house in Chicago, and I think affordable housing needs to focus not only on making rent more affordable, but also focusing on home ownership. Our little block on Burton Place has done a lot when it comes to affordable housing and creating pathways for individual homeowners, including hosting artists in residence at the Carl Street Studios. And I think we need to explore some of those options within our communities and creating that community support that we all need. Thanks for the time.
Thank you so much, Amy. Next, we have Di from Clark. Okay, I think we don't have Di. Let's go to Jesse O. Yeah, Jesse, you have been, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you. First of all, thank you to Alderman Hopkins, the staff, and for everyone in the community for staying on this call almost 2.5 hours now for what's obviously a very contentious issue. I want to address a few kind of quotes I've heard. People have said things like, "Who does this make sense for?" Or "I've yet to see the benefit to the community." And the thing is, what people are ignoring is this is going to be 500 new neighbors. A lot of people here on this call live in high rises. Americana Towers was mentioned before. A guy, a few callers earlier, talked about how he used to live in a rental building. My question for everyone who's ever lived in a high rise in Old Town near this area is, do you think the neighborhood would have been better if the place you lived hadn't been built? Or if you have friends who lived in those buildings? Do you think the neighborhood would have been better if those buildings hadn't been built? Do you think they should have stayed as a parking lot, a gas station, a low-rise commercial building? And why do you think this building is going to have such a transformational negative impact that those previous buildings didn't? This makes sense for the developer, of course, because they're out here to make a profit. They can't put in 100 units of affordable housing only because the market rate buildings are going to pay for that affordable housing without needing city money. But nevertheless, this is a quite positive impact for the neighborhood. You have 500 more people who'll be, some of them are the people who work in the neighborhood at cafes, at grocery stores. A lot of them are people who will shop in the neighborhood, the folks who will pay for the retail that makes Old Town so vibrant. I know a lot of people are worried about traffic. Frankly, this is a major exit off of Lakeshore Drive. That's the situation. It's not going to change. And I understand that it's really easy to be small C conservative about your neighborhood. Everybody wants to preserve where they live in Amber so it doesn't change from the moment they set eyes on it. But we live in a dynamic city. That's not the reality. If we want our neighborhoods to stay vibrant, we have to allow them to change, and we have to allow them to grow and develop. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Jesse. Next, we have Rob R. from LaSalle.
Hello.
Hello, Rob.
Hi, everybody. My name's Rob Rubin. I have 2 units at 1660. I agree with many of the concerns and substance comments this evening. I actually have a process comment and a request. Before that, though, I'd like to thank Alderman Hopkins for his many long years of service. It's not easy to be in public service these days, so Alderman, thank you very much. As a longtime 43rd Ward person, part of my identity, I want to welcome to our side of North Avenue. I was at St. Michael's as a renter, and then 1660 as a renter, and then 1660 as an owner, going back more than 40 years. So I greatly appreciate the role of both ownership and tenants as I'm a landlord as well. The process comment is this. Alderman, at the beginning of the meeting, you and the developer talked about a fully transparent, open process. I don't think it's quite the case, though. Let's take one of the bigger issues that everybody has, which is traffic and parking. Despite numerous requests to see the traffic study, we still can't get it. Numerous requests, September, December meetings, personal sit down between me, Steve Maserlian from 1660, and Nick Anderson. And we've consistently tried to get access to this traffic study, and we just can't get that. We keep being told we have to wait till it's reviewed by CDOT or whatever. I don't think that's a legal requirement. So perhaps, Alderman, you can explain, either you can help us get it, to get access to it, or you can explain why you can't. Somebody who's been involved in development, I just can't understand, if this is truly an open, transparent process, why we can't see it. So please help us get access to that. That's my request. In closing, I just want to note that I think in the December meeting, Nick had mentioned that his partners are Walgreens and Moody's, and how this project benefits them. And I got up at that meeting and I said, well, thank you, Mr. Developer. We appreciate that, but you didn't mention that your partners are the residents. And you didn't mention any of the benefits to the residents. And actually, not to pat myself on the back here, because it wasn't me that got the applause, it was that comment and that observation got the first applause line of the night. That's the way the entire process has been run. Alderman, we're trusting that you're going to be the one to look after our interests. We're trusting that you're our partner in this and that you've got our back, because it seems pretty clear that Fern Hill doesn't have our back. They got Walgreens back. They got Moody's back. They'd begin to function in good faith if we could get access, for example, to something major like the traffic study, but they won't even do that. So Alderman, we're really counting on you to help take care of us. Again, thank you for your service and thank you for your future service.
Thank you, Rob. Next up, we have Nancy from Sandburg.
Hi, this is Nancy. I'll just say my name, Nancy Slattery. I live in James Kilmer Condominium Association. I am the board president here. And Alderman Hopkins, I want to thank you as always for your time and commitment to listen to our feedback and comments. James Kilmer, along with I know some other associations, have done surveys, I think, as you had requested, to give you direct feedback from our residents, and that's been sent to you. So I hope you get the time to take a look at it, because a lot of it, I won't belabor it here, but we have concerns about the development as it's been presented. And many of those have been talked about tonight. Just briefly, the traffic concerns, because we have such an issue already where there is no development. We have safety concerns, especially in the summertime with the traffic coming off of North Avenue Beach and pedestrian traffic. As you know, there have been many problems. and just the pure density of what this development is bringing to the neighborhood. We're not opposed to a development by any stretch, so I don't want to sound like we are opposing this altogether. It's just there are many concerns we have that have not been addressed yet, and we would like them to be addressed. And one person earlier talked about, which hasn't been talked much about, but the look of the design. And there was a lot of feedback that we received about the design, in that it just does not feel like it fits within the personality, the feeling of Old Town. It doesn't feel like it fits in the neighborhood. And I will just hearken back to 1550 on Clark Street development that I know we were very involved in. That development today looks like it's been there forever, so it feels like it fits in the neighborhood. There is a way, and there are other developments in the Gold Coast that have gone up as well that feel that way. That would be great if something could feel more like it does belong in Old Town and has always belonged to Old Town, and becomes part of the fabric of what makes Old Town without standing out. Just a suggestion. So again, I think there are challenges, but there are things that I believe that, as you've heard from many people tonight, I agree wholeheartedly with Linda Kay from Wells Street about the personality of Old Town, the historic value, and being part of the community as a part of something that the community talks about in a bad way. So I just implore you to take a look at our survey. Sandburg Village, many other buildings also filled out the survey. It says a lot. It's there all in writing directly from our residents. And we just hope that we can continue this dialogue and work with you as we have in the past with the development on Clark Street to get to something where we can all feel comfortable and embrace. So I thank you for your time, and I again won't belabor a lot of what's already been said.
Thank you, Nancy. Next up is Kevin V. from Wells Street.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. First of all, thank you, Alderman Hopkins, Brian, and I know Ethan's somewhere there in the background helping out. Thank you guys for doing this. Obviously not an easy job to spend 3 hours in community meetings. So my name is Kevin Vaughn, and my wife and I own Corcoran's at 1615 North Wells, and we've been in business for 24 years. Before that, it was the Last Act, and before that, it was the Earl of Old Town. We consider our building and our business part of the fabric that makes Old Town special. We also own 1617 North Wells, which is the building just to the north of Corcoran's. So we share a 240-foot lot line with Walgreens and a 60-foot lot line with the Moody parking lot. And we have a parking garbage easement through the Moody lot. We have a good relationship and a lot of love for Moody Church. We're generally supportive of reasonable development, as is good for business and good for the neighborhoods. We are not surprised they want to develop the property, but we were overwhelmed by the massive scale of what is being proposed for the following reasons. And let me just start by, and I have 4 points here, and let me just start by saying, I don't consider myself a NIMBY. I consider myself pro-development. I'm absolutely in favor of more density and affordable housing, but this is just too big and just too much density. 500 units and over 400,000 square feet. Pretty much the same size as 1660 LaSalle, and we're going to take that building and we're going to plant it right on the corner of North and Wells. So it's going to dramatically change the feel of Wells Street as you go north and south with that big, large building sitting right on the corner. Traffic. I'm most concerned about the construction period for traffic. Honestly, that stretch between LaSalle and Wells, when you add in all the trucks for construction, it's going to be a very difficult period, and there's just no It's going to be very dangerous for pedestrians at the corner at Wells and North Avenue, and then coming off Lakeshore Drive with the trucks loading and unloading. And construction is a temporary thing, but in this case, my guess is about a 2-year period minimum, right? So it's not inconsequential. The construction traffic is going to be a major issue in the neighborhood. Obviously, it's been mentioned before, but just traffic in general, it's just a very busy intersection. I drive through it every day, and just adding moving trucks and adding Ubers, etc. It's not something that can be discounted, and it's not something that can be overcome easily. Generally, all the high rises. My third point is generally all the high rises in the neighborhood have significant setbacks. 1660 has a setback. Sandburg Village has a setback. Americana Towers has a setback. The new ones, the Old Town Park, there's setbacks on that property. The issue here is that the portion of the lot where basically the Walgreens property where the tower is going to be built, it's only about 80 feet deep. So there's not room to push the building back off of North Avenue. And that to me is really what they're trying to do here with the size of the lot where Walgreens is at for the tower portion. They're trying to put a square peg into a round hole. I don't think the building fits on that lot size. The last point I have is that the 36-story portion of the tower above Walgreens, it's only set back 12 feet. So you have Walgreens on the bottom, and then they above that to the height of Corcoran's, there's another 2 stories, but then there's just a 12-feet setback, and then it goes up 36 floors. I don't believe that 12-foot setback is adequate for that development. The reality is, as people walk north and south on Wells Street, which is very much a pedestrian street, one of the greatest pedestrian streets in the city, that what people are going to see is a massive structure that's 250 feet wide and 400 feet tall. It's massive, and it's going to completely change the character of that Wells Street experience. And I just really believe that it needs to, if it's something's going to go ahead, that it needs to be pushed a little further back off, or let's say a lot further back off of Wells Street. So I really think that although I'm supportive of development in general, that I really think that this is a big miss. It's just too big. There's got to be big adjustments, and I really think that the developer should go back to the drawing board and come up with a different plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Next, we have Baxter C.
Baxter, you have been permitted to speak. Please go ahead and unmute if you would like to proceed with your public comment.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Moving around. I'm Baxter Furry. I am 25 years old, part of Generation Z. Proudly am a renter. I unfortunately have been, as some others have mentioned, been priced out of neighborhoods. I've had to move further north and north and north. I've moved 3 times now in Chicago because of how expensive it is. And I am totally for a housing project of this size. 500 units in basically downtown Chicago makes sense. We're in a city. Old Town has great access to public transit, which is a huge benefit of being in the city. So people complaining about traffic is like mind-boggling to me, because people want to live in Old Town so they don't have to drive a car, so they don't have to deal with traffic. They want to take buses and run lines and things like that. So it's just disheartening to hear people complain about things that really probably aren't going to be an issue, especially because a lot of renters tend to be younger, and younger people tend to not be able to afford cars right now. We're in a cost of living crisis for housing. Housing right now in Old Town, if you make minimum wage, would be 60% of your salary, which is double that of what most people would recommend you spend on housing. People who walk your dogs in weather like this. I walk dogs. I'm covered head to toe in snow gear walking dogs, and I can't live close to where your dogs are. I just think that's disgraceful, because you want a view, because like you got something zoned in the 90s. This isn't the 90s anymore. Come back to reality. We are in 2024. We need more housing. 500 units would lower the cost of housing for everyone, no matter what. We know that any new rental units will lower the cost of housing. So thank you. I support the project. I support the 500 units as a. Thanks again, Alderman.
Thank you, Baxter. Next up is Stephen M. from Dayton Street.
Stephen, you have been permitted to speak. Please go ahead and use the unmute feature to engage in public comments.
All right. Hi, I'm Stephen. I'm here with my wife, Carlin, and we are both very much in favor of this project. We have no financial interest in the project other than the fact that we are renters. And projects like this help keep rental costs low enough that we can stay in this neighborhood. We've had a lot of friends be forced out of this neighborhood. We know if our landlord ever sold the place, we'd probably be priced out as well as things stand. But we're potential residents of this new tower. I guess I'd like to just sort of sell you on the idea of us as neighbors. We aren't transient. We are quiet. We are not going to contribute to traffic. My wife and I, when we moved here 16 years ago, we got rid of our cars, both of us. And when we pass by the site where this project would be, my daughter and I pass by pretty frequently, either walking or on our bikes or on the 73 bus. I just want people on the call to realize how incredibly special places like Chicago and specifically this neighborhood is. It's one of the only places in North America that you can live comfortably without a car. And there's this critical mass you need to hit to have a city where public transit works and enough people ride it that it makes sense. And we saw during the pandemic, we dropped below that critical mass and we hated it. And now we're kind of recovering from that. We need housing like this. We need density. Yeah, thank you for having calls like this. And please let projects like this move forward as quickly as possible. We need them.
Thank you, Stephen. Next, we have Stephanie P. from Clark. Apologies. Actually, Brandon W. from Wisconsin.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
We can.
Great. Mr. Alderman, neighbors, and Fern Hill, I stand against the Fern Hill proposed development. Growth brings change, and we support appropriate development. We support, in our community, low to mid-rise development, as you've seen many times. But Fern Hill development is not that here. From the big picture, Fern Hill is the wrong development for that location. It uses the wrong size building at a wrong location. And it does not fit, it's not compatible with our community. This building that they've proposed is way too big on too small a property. You've got too much density, and your planned development uses the air rights of the uninvolved gas stations so that you can try to justify a bigger building. The traffic, congestion, and parking problems at this location is already extremely congested. It's like Fern Hill picked the worst traffic location possible, and you're going to make it even worse. If we look at our precious lakefront, this location is really the only remaining lakefront space. And Fern Hill wants to build a huge high-rise. Why don't you, Fern Hill, take a look at the empty lot, the full block lot at Sedgwick, Schiller, and Orleans, or go to Lincoln Yards, lots of space. But Fern Hill wants a lot more money. You want higher rents in buildings that have lakefront views, so that Fern Hill benefits at the expense of Old Town and its constituents. If you look around our community, every single high-rise building, except for one, were all built over 50 years ago in the 1960s and the 1970s. And much has changed since then. And everyone knows what that one exception was, which is the 420-foot Eugenie Terrace that was highly controversial in 1988 when it was a backdoor deal that was a community cram down. That there was a huge uproar over that, and it caused the downzoning in the 1990s by Alderman Berdini to the -3 zoning. That was to make it so that at that location, there was never supposed to be another high-rise like that. Never again was the conversation at the time. That was 35 years ago. And now Fern Hill wants to break the rules and create another massive structure. And with the intensity of community opposition, is that going to be another cram down? We say no to Fern Hill proposed development, no to the rezoning, keep it at the -3, and throw out your planned development so that you don't play games with the air rights. The gas stations, that's just part of the deal for Moody's, because if this happens, Moody's gets the 2 gas stations and—
Brandon, in the interest of, I apologize on interrupting, but you're a bit past time here, and we still got quite a few people left. So thank you for your comments. We're going to move on to the next person.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, next we have Mike B. from Sandburg. No, Jill, let's go Jill S. I apologize. Jill S. from LaSalle.
Yes, hello, good evening. I've lived in 1660 for 25 years. I bought 2 units and I was 27 years old when I bought my first one with my own money. Alderman Hopkins, many of us voted for you. You wouldn't be here if it weren't for us. And I'm not even sure you are still on the call since we haven't seen you for the last hour. You must do the right thing. If you lived here, you would highly object this development. And Nick, you did live here. Our property values will plummet. And we've already seen decreases from units trying to sell. We asked for a FOIA request about the current status, the current studies that Fern Hill has done, traffic, etc., and keep getting put off. Months ago, we asked for it. Where's the transparency and good business partner in its lack of action? Where's the transparency of community opposition versus support? We and the aldermen need to see this, and the public needs to know. Because the developer has the burden of proof to convince you as the alderman and other relevant city agencies that a variance is warranted, what would convince you, the alderman, that the variance should be granted as opposed to adhering to the current zoning limitations, which were established about 35 years ago to preserve the character of Old Town? Also, the parking area behind the old Treasure Island is dark and desolate and a prime place for crime. We have seen it in the past. We will see it again. No one will ever vote for you again, and your reputation will forever be tarnished, losing any reputational credibility. You cannot ignore the downzoning in this area. It contributes to the appeal and character of the Old Town neighborhood. We elected you because we trusted you. Build a low-rise in concert with the design in Old Town and the new Walgreens and retail, fine. Not a monolith of the building that will affect our property values. I bought my unit with a gorgeous view of the city of Chicago for a reason. I worked my tail off all of my life, and this tower would totally obliterate the value I have worked so hard to build. For those of you opposed, considered if you invested in 1660, your property value worked so hard to build is now doomed. As a long-term resident of Old Town and an area that you state you are committed to, Alderman Hopkins, you must oppose this development. Thank you.
Thank you. And for the record, I do see Alderman Hopkins on camera, so just wanted to make that clear for the record. Appreciate your comments, Jill. Next, we have Paul K. from LaSalle.
Yes, thank you. I moved to Old Town in 1971 with my late wife. I was president of the Old Town Triangle Association, and she ran the art fair for a couple of years. So I think we know the area. We were proud when Old Town Historic District was named historic, but that's Old Town, the village. I now live at 1660, so I'm going to be directly affected. I have a south view. And to me, it's just a different area than the Old Town village that Diane Gonzalez worked so hard on. I think this is a good project. I think it makes the neighborhood safer. It brings more people. It brings more taxes, and I support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. David J. from LaSalle.
Thank you. Just want to point out that if you're keeping track, Brian, mark me down as enthusiastic about this project. I think it's going to create more housing and create economic opportunity and be a boon for the tax rolls for the city of Chicago and for the ward. I don't see the traffic problems being an issue. I think they've been addressed, and Nick, you've outlined pretty clearly how you're going to address those issues. I think the project should be an excellent injection of economic activity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Next, we have Mary Kay T. from Sedgwick. Looks like we do not have Mary Kay present. Let's go to Georgiana Y. from LaSalle.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, everybody. I know a lot of good information was shared tonight. And I had all my notes prepared, but as people are speaking, I don't want to be too repetitive. I've lived in Old Town for over 16 years. I've been a renter for a big portion of my life, and I've also been an owner, as many of these people on this call have tonight. I want to clear one misconception that I think a lot of the renters on this call are under the impression that this building is going to create more quote unquote affordable housing for everyone, for every single renter, where I just don't believe that's going to be the case. I think, actually, I know Nick Anderson vocalized this to a board member in our building, saying that this is going to be one of the most expensive high rises in Chicago. I can't quote rates, but I would not be surprised if they're north of 3,000, even closer to 4,000. So as a renter, if you think Nick Anderson has your best interests at heart and is going to give you an opportunity to live in Old Town, you're kidding yourselves with that one. I'm going to go off the beaten track for a second as well, because I just want to point out a couple other concerns that I have. Part of the plan for Fern Hill is to have Walgreens relocate to the Treasure Island space, which I don't know, Alderman Hopkins, if you've actually been through the back pathway of 1660 to get to Wall Street, but you have to go down that dark, secluded pathway to get to Wall Street. And we all know that Walgreens has recently had their fair share of problems with heavy crime. Most of all their merchandise is locked up currently. They've had shootings. Their employees carry guns. We connect residents, Eugenie Terrace residents, as well as other residents in Old Town, walk through that dark, secluded pathway to get to Wall Street. It's just too dangerous, and criminals can hide out very easily. Another point I would like to make is people keep talking about how increased population in Old Town will be good for the businesses, which sure, in a perfect world, hopefully it will. But during the construction period, with all the trucks and the noise and the dust on a huge, heavily, very, very busy intersection, no one's going to want to come here. So all of those current establishments that depend on local business and people coming in from out of town, it's scary. They may actually go under because of this. I know I would be dreading the construction as a resident, and I don't think it's good for the current businesses, maybe future businesses, but you could very well be wiping out our local Old Town establishments. So those are my opinions. I'm heavily opposed to this. I think Old Town is a historic neighborhood and it does not need a 500 unit, 600 to 700 run.
All right, let's go.
Again, no hate against the renters on this call, but thank you.
Marilyn, thank you for your comments. Next we have, I'm sorry, that was Georgiana. Marilyn is next. Marilyn F.
Yes, thank you. I would like to just, in defense of the comment regarding Alderman Hopkins not being available for meetings, I live in a building where we have had no problem ever, it's a condo building, ever arranging a meeting with Alderman Hopkins. Also, to accuse Fern Hill of just wanting to make money, well, of course, they're in a business. That's their business. That being said, however, I have to say that I do agree with all the concerns that have already been so well expressed. I feel the effect of quality on the life of the neighborhood is definitely at risk. And the traffic, for people who say it's not going to affect traffic, have you looked at the traffic during school hours on North Avenue from Latin School? And to add to that is, I think would be just an absolute travesty. The plan deeply concerns me, as well as many of the neighbors, as a matter of fact, all the neighbors that I've ever mentioned this to. I have admired and always supported Alderman Hopkins, and I hope that he won't, I don't want to use the word betray, but that he will continue to listen to us and see his way to, in my opinion, realizing that this is a bad plan. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much, Marilyn. Next, we have Peter H. from Dearborn.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I want to make a couple of observations, mostly from what I've been listening to on the call. Fern Hill is being compensated for having affordable housing in the building. They didn't pick 100 units out of nowhere. It correlates to the tax benefits that they're getting. And the tax benefits that they're getting by including affordable housing outweigh the reduction in rent that they're charging for those units. It's just mathematical. They're not doing it out of any sense of altruism at all.
Introducing the MyPerks Pay Rewards Visa credit.
And you might ask Nick, what his rental assumptions are for the units that are not affordable units. And look, if you're a young person out here and you can snag one of these affordable units, that's terrific. But if you can't, and you think you're going to live in the building, you might be very much mistaken. Second point I'd like to make is that it wasn't September 26th that this plan was unveiled. The discussions were before that. And there were a lot of discussions about pedestrian-friendly environment, interaction with the community. There were streetscaping along Clark Street. And all of that got thrown out of the window. And what they're focused on now is, how many income-producing units can they create in the space that's available for them. And they don't care about anything else. The traffic problems are enormous, both on LaSalle Street and on North Avenue. It's already very difficult to drive from where I am at the Constellation to get to O'Hare Airport. It's a nightmare crossing North Avenue. And they have the entrance to the building located on North Avenue, and there's going to be deliveries and Ubers and Uber Eats and Amazon that's going to jam up North Avenue and make it impossible to drive through there. And they've created a dangerous condition on LaSalle Street with that entrance that is directly going to conflict with people who are coming down south on LaSalle Street and trying to turn on North Avenue. It's just a disaster. I can't believe the alderman's going to approve that traffic plan.
Thank you, Peter. Next, we have Gene B.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I've lived at 1660 like 40 years right now, and I can tell you why we have congestion. And Alderman Hopkins, I'm really happy that you're hearing the other side of what Nick Anderson and whoever set this up is in place. The reason we have the congestion we do is we have a history museum, Moody, St. Michael's, St. Paul's churches, as well as all denominational churches and a Japanese temple. We have Second City. Germania Club has art exhibits like the Van Gogh exhibit and classes. Latin School with the grammar and the high school where people drop off kids, and 7 other schools, including adult schools. Different businesses on Wells Street from Division to Eugenie. Export Fitness, health fitness centers, and 5 other health fitness clubs. The Restoration Hardware Furniture Showroom and the cafe. Walgreens and their crazy hours. Wintrust and Chase Banks, just to name 2. North Avenue Beach is inundated with people, especially in the summer. Then we have the autos, the DVD bikes, the scooters. It's an ever-increasing public transportation. Share with me what other areas in Chicago have this kind of congestion. Crime is increasing in our cities, so where could our area go yet be controlled? It is really difficult to understand how we can entertain another 500 apartments plus parking and stores in this already congested area of Old Town. Let me tell you, this is a real facade. To think that we want to put in 400 or 500 more apartments with the congestion we already have, for what reason? It's impossible to live here now. 500 more units plus parking and stores will make it impossible to move. I appreciate the opportunity to express my feelings, Hopkins. Look forward to your final decision going forward.
Thank you, Gene. Next, we have Bob S. Go ahead, Bob.
Unmute. Okay, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I've owned at 1660 for over 30 years. And we own 3 condos at 1660, 2 of which are rentals. And we like having renters, obviously. I'm opposed to this project. The new building doesn't have a setback. I'm talking about the tower. Doesn't have a setback from the sidewalk. When there's ice that forms on the building, it's going to fall on people. When you look at the other buildings that have been constructed over the years, 1660, Americana, and Eugenie Terrace, they're all set back from the streets. This building is right on a major thoroughfare of North Avenue. And people are going to be double parking on North Avenue, causing huge congestion. It was brought up earlier that people are going to have to circle the block and go down the very tiny street of Eugenie Terrace and to get back onto LaSalle. The building, when I look at the layout of the building, it can't handle the trucks and moving trucks, garbage trucks, contractors that are going to be needing to go in and out of the building over the years. 1660 has a nice big parking lot, and it still gets jammed. The problem is going in and out of this building off of LaSalle is going to be a nightmare, congestion, and the traffic that it's going to cause is going to limit emergency vehicles from servicing the area. Somebody's going to die from this monstrosity. It's terrible. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Bob.
Oh, and it'll turn condo eventually. Those people that had rentals are going to disappear.
Thank you, Bob. Next up, we have, I'm sorry, I lost my spot here. Jan L. from Wells.
Hi, Alderman Hopkins. I live in the Americana Towers building. My husband and I, we came from Lincoln Park because we recently retired. We bought this condo in Old Town. When we walked in, the view, I was in awe when I saw the view. That was our deal breaker, the view. We are both retired. Every night I go to bed looking at the gorgeous lit up skyline. And I wake up every morning looking at a gorgeous sunrise. My husband and I hoped to spend the rest of our retired years looking at this every day and every night. I don't know how you plan to retire, but this was our dream, and you're taking it away. So I hope I can speak for everybody that is losing their gorgeous views. Please don't do this to us. And to all the renters that spoke tonight that said you have hopes of buying a home, when you invest your hard-earned money into this home because of this view, I think you'll change your point of view when your view is taken, when everything is taken away from you. So I hope you won't do this to us, Alderman. Thank you. There you go.
Thank you. Next up, we have Molly M. from Leland.
Huh?
I didn't want you to say anything. You were still on.
Oh.
Hi, I can't believe I'm still on here. I'm outside walking my dog, so hopefully you can hear me.
We can hear you fine.
Okay, so my notes are in the inside. I needed to walk the dog, but bottom line, do we live in Chicago, or do we live in New York, or do we live in Seattle? Where do we live? We live in Old Town. Okay, so do we want another building that looks like it could be in any city in the entire country, that it could even be in Singapore or Tokyo? So, any building that's going to be here needs to look like it's actually from here, and it needs to fit. This doesn't fit. I know there's a lot of people who say, oh, okay, well, what about the renters? Well, guess what? I don't know. My research has been, there are a lot of places to rent. Now, granted, they might not be affordable housing, but I don't really think that Fern Hill has affordable housing first and foremost in their minds. Yes, I am an owner, but I did used to rent. I have been in the Old Town neighborhood for almost 20 years, and I started as a renter. No, it wasn't easy. I do own, not in a high rise. I feel for the people that are in a high rise that are going to lose their views. Mr. Alderman, thank you for giving us this time. And Fern Hill, I really hope that you think about whether or not this is really the right place for you. There's a huge spot over, where the horses used to be, the horses and buggies. It's just sitting there empty. What about developing there? I don't know. It would be a lot that would ruin my world, but it wouldn't be at such a busy location. Anyway, check out the place over on Schiller where they used to have the horses. Maybe you can put them there. All right, thank you for your time, and it's a lovely evening out here in Old Town. Cheers.
Thank you, Lynn. Next up, we have, I'm sorry, that was Molly.
Molly.
Excuse me. Yeah, my apologies. It's been a long night so far. Let's go to Lynn, who is next. Lynn H.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Alderman Hopkins, for this opportunity.
Really appreciate you hearing the feedbacks, both pros and cons, to what's before us. When the process, and there's a lot that have sort of been mentioned, so I will be brief and do my best not to repeat. But when the process started, the needs.
Lynn, we had you and we seem to have lost your audio. We'll give you a couple seconds here. Oh,
hello?
There we go. Go ahead. Nope, I think we lost you again,
Okay.
Lynn.
Yeah, she's back on.
Well, she's here, but we can't hear her. Oh, now we do.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I think my internet is causing me issues tonight. There was a comment made about the initial conversations that it was started out as just community input and, you know, the great ideas for walking space and so forth. And what we've been proposed is quite different from the initial discussions, but we had talked about wanting to reflect the wants and needs of the community. But this has really been a Fern Hill-led discussion every single meeting. So thank you for this opportunity to finally really have our thoughts heard. Because seemingly we went from don't have any plans yet, don't have anything in mind, just want to hear everything, to a well fleshed out development of a building and incorporating and moving the pharmacy and so forth. As far as affordable housing, someone just mentioned, yes, it's just 20%. So I have a question. I know questions are not being answered right now, but I'd appreciate in the response, what kind of rents are they anticipating? Because we're floating out there affordable housing, but that's not going to be the bulk of it. Yes, there'll be an influx of property taxes, but to what detriment? What are the pros and cons of that? Are there other ways to get influx of property taxes versus this many residents? As everybody knows, and it's been touched on just like a bit, the corner of North and LaSalle, that backs up to Lakeshore Drive any day in the summer, any weekend in the summer. So now that we're going to be adding 500 unit building to that corner, if someone wants to get to it coming east on North Avenue, they've got to circle the entire block to get to either entrance, either on LaSalle or North Avenue, as I understand it. So
Thank you, Lynn. We're gonna move on to the next individual. We appreciate your comments. Next we have Kathy R. from Lincoln Avenue.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, hi. Wow, first I want to congratulate Fern Hill on their amazing public relations campaign. It's impressive, but I have to say it feels a bit disingenuous. And I have to say that I'm impressed by some of the young people and the renters who aren't financially vested in the neighborhood and who made a point to sit in on this Tuesday night call. They sound so passionate and they sound like they have the same prepared statements that this is about creating affordable housing and saving the depressed, sad, old town businesses and all the empty buildings. So I ask them, do you really believe a high-rise tower on the corner of Wells and North Avenue is the solution to your affordable housing crisis in Old Town? I'm sorry to say that I think you're going to be disappointed because they aren't creating this development for the house deprived or to make this affordable housing for you and your family, which I'm not sure that this is described as even a family type of building. Can we all be honest? Bottom line is that this neighborhood is all about profit right now for developers. It's profit for the city. It's profit for the elected officials. This is about making a lot of money. And why do I know that? I've lived here for 20 years. And in the last 7 years, my property taxes have gone up 100%. I'm also in a landmark building. I can't do anything. And you know what else? I can't even go beyond my zoning laws. So why can't Fern Hill build within the zoning code? And Fern Hill and investors, we want to know if you hired lobbyists to lobby Chicago officials, such as Chicago aldermen. We want to know if you're lobbying the City Department of Zoning and Planning. We will find out if you're politically connected to downtown, trust me. And question for Alderman Hopkins and Alderman Knudsen. Yes, Tim Knudsen, do you really want your political future tied to this project? I've lived here for 20 years. If I have to follow the rules, if I have to pay my taxes and all that I have to do.
Thank you for your comments. We're going to move on to Kelly J. from LaSalle.
Kelly, you have been permitted to speak. Please use the unmute button if you would like to proceed with public comments.
Susan B. from Menominee.
Hi, my name is Susan Bogey, and I'm a 40-year resident of the Old Town Triangle. I remember when this area was downzoned and neighbors promised no more massive high-rises would be built. Why is this battle being fought again? We want the promise kept and the current zoning laws upheld. Please do not change the zoning for this area. Why are neighbors' voices being ignored while Fern Hill wages a public relations campaign touting non-existent transparency? In the name of transparency, I'd like to know if Walgreens is a silent partner. Why would a retailer sign a 99-year lease unless it had some sort of equity stake in the property? Plain and simple, we do not want this obtrusive, massive high-rise in our neighborhood. Neighborhood is the key word here. The charm of Old Town is its vintage buildings and being part of the community, a true community. The building as planned is just too tall and too dense. The proposed design does not fit into the character of our neighborhood. There are absolutely no benefits to us, only to the developer who will build and move on. Moving the building to the northwest corner creates a hulking presence on Wells Street, blocking the sky and totally overwhelming Wells and North Avenue. There's no setback. I'm totally appalled. The size and density of this building will create a traffic nightmare. No matter what Fern Hill says, wants us to believe, there will be a bottleneck. Hello, are you still hearing me? Hello?
We are. Your time is about to expire. Do you have a final thought?
Well, please do not let this massive high-rise overshadow our neighborhood and change the character forever. Please keep the promise that was made to us when the zoning was changed so many years ago and protect our quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Next up is Daniel B. from Wells Street.
Hi, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm 34 years old. My wife and I own a unit in 1636 Wells that she bought in 2017. We lived in the area until just a few months ago. So we care a lot about what's going on in this property. When we first heard about it, we were actually pretty excited. Fern Hill came in talking about, we're going to take out these gas stations. We're going to respect the community. We're going to build something real nice. It's going to be great. We're going to listen to you. But that, really didn't hold true from the very beginning. Even I experienced this. You dodged my questions on one of the first meetings a couple years ago now, I guess, about how many floors are you thinking about? Didn't answer it, didn't address it, just ignored it. And as it turns out, you're thinking about a lot of floors, way too many, as I think, and a lot of other people think. And to all the other people in my generation who think that this is going to be affordable housing, don't kid yourself. 100 units out of 500, that's lip service. This is a slap in the face to the neighborhood. This is not respecting the neighborhood. This is about trying to get in there and build a giant corporate rental cash machine, taking premium views from people who have bought properties and have been invested in the neighborhood. And this does not leave anybody with any ownership except for Fern Hill and their investors. So this does not put money into the community. It puts money into shareholders of Fern Hill. As it stands, I strongly stand against this building. And I hope, you go back to the drawing board and come back with something that, does respect the community, that fits within the design and with what people have voiced here tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. Michael P.
Good evening.
Good evening. We can hear you.
Great. Alderman Hopkins, my name is Michael Pitts. I live on State Parkway, but due to some of the questions about transparency, let me also indicate that I'm on staff at the Moody Church. I've lived in the community off and on for the last 35 years, and obviously I'm a supporter of the project. With the different comments that are made, I would like to see an investment in this area. The Wells, cleaning up the North Avenue along between Wells and LaSalle would be really nice for the community. We'd have a new Walgreens and replace a building that's really at the end of its useful life. Yes, it would provide parking for the Moody Church, which would help us to consolidate some of our parking needs. We attract people from all 50 wards of the city. So a lot of our people do drive in for our services in the city. I think we've been a good partner in the community. If you look back, we've been in we moved to this area of the city in 1915. So we're a 100-year plus organization to the community. I think we've invested in the community. I think the projects we have done in the past have been respectful of the community. If you look at the addition that we did in 2007, it fits the community. So I think this is a good thing for us. I think it's a good thing for our tax base. It's a good thing to have more density, more people in the area to help with the businesses as well. So obviously a strong supporter of the project.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Tim King.
Tim, you have been permitted to speak if you would like to engage in public comment. Okay.
We can hear you. Thank you.
Hi, guys. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. I'm an Old Town resident, a property owner, and I'm approaching the age of 60, so I'm not some renter like Kathy Roach wants to disparage. I thought I would be in the majority tonight as I support this development. However, based on the comments, there appears to be a much more balanced view. The vacant lot and the gas stations on LaSalle have been long overdue for development. They are an eyesore and are in desperate need for change. While some in the community are against a high-rise, they are being completely naive to think that a developer will take on this project without generating an economic return. A mid-sized building will not accomplish that. Can Fern Hill knock off a couple of floors? Possibly, but it will still need to be some form of a high-rise. I also believe that other components of the development, including streetscapes, Walgreens, and Treasure Island, are additional benefits, and that the project as a whole has been well thought out. And to one of the callers who's questioning property values, I think that's a bunch of BS. This project will provide more foot traffic, a more vibrant residential and business community, and ultimately increase in property values. Haven't you noticed the amount of empty space around here? How many stores do you all want to close in the name of maintaining the so-called character of the neighborhood? I also know that many people focus on keeping the neighborhood what it was versus what it needs to be for the future. How many of the objectives are even going to be here in 10 or 15 years? Will this be your neighborhood then? Cities are full of filling neighborhoods that didn't adjust to the time. The fact is the majority that are dissidents here are residents that live in high rises, particularly 1660, who have a not in my backyard mentality and are trying to control the narrative. It is about their building and not the community at large. I implore the aldermen and the other decision makers to not be bullied by the loudest in the room to solely drive this decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Next, we have Jacob C. from LaSalle.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, sir.
I suppose the timing's good. My name is Jacob Custer. I'm an owner in 1660. I actually bought a unit last year at the age of 27. I'm extremely proud to live here, and I really love all the people who live in this building. The gentleman who spoke earlier, who's lived here since 1971, and the fact that you are a supporter is inspiring to me, because I think that, you know, this building, it does kind of make that corner look a lot nicer. Now, there are absolutely downsides to it. And what I would suggest to Fern Hill is that you guys should do a better job of outlining these benefits that we're kind of going back and forth about. You know, are there actual benefits from an economic standpoint? I know this for a fact. I need a grocery store. I don't have a car. I cannot ride a bike down Wells, constantly trying to avoid cars, trying to not get hit, and then take these bags back from Aldi all the way back into my building. We need a grocery store. I don't know if that means we then need this high-rise to justify the grocery store. I know you mentioned that at a previous meeting, but I know that we need this grocery store, and it would absolutely, I think, increase our property values to have Treasure Island return. And also, someone talked about bike lanes earlier. Absolutely agree. We need bike lanes everywhere. I've been almost hit by a car and I fell off, and it was very serious. And these streets are very dangerous. So I absolutely support bike lanes. And so, yeah, I think that you guys need to do a better job. Your presentations are pretty, but you don't talk about the facts of how this will help people. And they're not being persuaded because you aren't communicating that to them. And, you know, there's a lot of different people who are affected by this in different ways. And I think that it's very fair to some of the opinions that have been shared. And it definitely seems like some type of kind of generation thing, but I think we know that some of these areas, just the gas stations, you know, there was a shooting there. We don't need these gas stations anymore. These vacant lots. Why are we defending an empty parking lot that is just sitting there? I feel for the south-facing people in my building, absolutely, and I hope that there's some resolution met with that situation. But I've seen, as the gentleman just mentioned, you know, businesses that have closed down. That one right next to the cleaners, he opened up a store, and, you know, 2 weeks later it's gone. So I think we all want to see kind of more people going into more stores to support the businesses. There's a lot of nuanced, valid opinions here. I'm not trying to say that anyone's right or wrong. But I do think that you should highlight the benefits to people, because clearly it's not being done.
Thank you, Jacob. Next, we have Ward Miller.
Hold on. Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
All right. Good evening, Alderman Hopkins, Brian.
Hey, Ward, we got you.
All right. Thank you. I'm Ward Miller, the Richard H. Treehouse Executive Director of Preservation Chicago. Moody Triangle and the Fern Hill development was one of our Preservation Chicago 7 most endangered buildings and sites in 2022. We are concerned about the height of the proposed development and the quality of life issues with such a tall 400-foot building and development. But also, can we look at a Chicago landmark district, or perhaps two, maybe a few individual landmarks as well? This would include several buildings, actually many buildings, along the Wells Street Historic District corridor, as well as Moody Church, which has indicated that they want to stay here for a long time to come, but yet they don't want a landmark designation of their historic and iconic church complex. What kind of message does that send to the community and the city? Moody Church is a partner in this development and should be landmarked as part of any deal now or in the future. We also looked at a landmark designation of the Wintrust Bank building, not part of the Fern Hill site, but adjacent to it, and even the Archway Standard BP station, where if not a gas station, you know, can the canopy be integrated into a new project on that site? Just a few ideas. We need to consider and honor the historic areas and character of Old Town and maybe we don't want to repeat the large and huge developments of the past. Thank you for your consideration of a more sensitive approach to the development, and also to honor and protect more of the historic buildings in this great community. And we work here quite a bit, and grateful for the time spent tonight talking about the impacts of this development. But I just wanted to emphasize that it would be great to see more landmark buildings and more landmark districts in this really important area of the city. And the impact and quality of life of these kinds of large projects, I really think should be looked at and examined more. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ward. That concludes our public comment portion. All who pre-registered to speak and were available when they were called have now spoken. I apologize to anybody who maybe didn't register, who we can't get to at this point, since we are going on 3.5 hours. So to wrap things up here, I'm turning it back over to Alderman Hopkins for concluding remarks. Alderman.
Okay. Can you hear me? Am I unmuted?
We can hear you now. Thank you.
Yeah, I've lost the screen. Hold on a minute. Oh, there we go. Okay, wait, hold on. Got All right, I'm just gonna have to hold it. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
This is many Zoom meetings I've been in. This is the first one that my fully charged AirPods have died. So I switched over to my headset, but it was worth it. This was an outstanding meeting. I want to thank everyone who was on the call, and most particularly everyone who remains on the call right now. The fact that you stuck it out for this marathon session indicates two things. Your involvement as an active citizen of a neighborhood that you care deeply about, and the importance of this project. As alderman, I have a lot of tough decisions that I've made and have to make. It's part of the job, and I love my job. But there's days that it's harder than others. And this is certainly a challenging moment. And I want to acknowledge a number of speakers who expressed that sentiment, who said something like, we realize that this is controversial, and ultimately I am the decision maker on this. I'm not going to hide from that. This is a zoning decision. And in Chicago, we have something called aldermanic prerogative, which you've all heard of. And that means that we're the ones who have to settle this when there's a controversy like this with pros and cons. So I've listened very carefully, and so many of the speakers tonight, both proponents and opponents, have really done an outstanding job making a well-reasoned case for the position that has been taken. And in fact, if anything, it makes my job harder because there's very good reasons to support this. There's very good reasons to oppose it. My job as alderman is, of course, to represent the neighborhoods like Old Town, the people and the voters there that sent me to represent them to city council. However, I also have to keep the larger interests of the city as a whole. First and foremost, we need the tax revenue from a project like this. We need, as a city, to continue to grow, to be vibrant, to attract investment, and to stand on the world stage and say Chicago is a world-class city. Frankly, that's under threat right now with everything that's been happening. The increase in crime and the fact that our reputation has taken a hit in the international media. So the fact that we still have investors who are willing to look at proposals like this, regardless of how you feel about it and regardless of how it affects you, is actually a good thing for a city right now that is in many ways at a crossroads. I feel the weight. I feel the weight of this right now on my shoulders, and it's significant. Some people have asked, why haven't I taken a position yet? Well, the reason is because we're still in a process. We're in a very public process of vetting this proposal, and the Fern Hill team, and I'll defend them a little bit right now, they've done an outstanding job of listening. Of course, they're a for-profit enterprise. We still live in a capitalist society. believe it or not. I know we've got some socialists in the city council, but this is still a capitalist economy and developers are in it to make a profit. That's not a secret and it's not a scandal, but they also know that they can't get this across the finish line for approval unless there is a community benefit, both to the immediate neighborhood and to the larger city as a whole. They're not there yet. They're working to get there. They may or may not. We'll know in the near future because we've had some progress on this proposal. As other speakers have mentioned, different community meetings have been held and others will. Fern Hill has individually gone to different condo buildings and different stakeholders in the neighborhood. And I will continue to have, along with Old Town merchants and residents and Old Town Triangle as well, if they want to have another one. There's much more to discuss as particularly the traffic piece gets fleshed out a little bit more. Some speakers have expressed an interest in seeing the traffic study. That is forthcoming. It is under review by CDOT right now, the Chicago Department of Transportation. In fact, I talked to the commissioner shortly before I got on this call tonight. That is the next piece of this puzzle that really does need to be addressed in much more detail than we were able to get into tonight. And that's coming. So this is not the last step in the process. This is not the last opportunity for public input. And my decision is forthcoming, but I'm not going to make it prematurely. We have more work to do, and we have a continuing dialogue that's going on. So that's where I want to leave it tonight. As I mentioned at the beginning of this meeting, for those of you that were on, you're going to get an invitation immediately after the adjournment of this meeting to complete a Google form, which you'll be sent. We really want to hear from you in more detail than you were able to do tonight in this two-minute session that you were granted. And there's some specific questions in there that we would really like you to answer. I need to hear from the people that I represent in a little bit more detail than a forum like this provides. So please answer the Google Doc when you get it and stay tuned for the next meeting. Pam, I see you there still with us. Do you have any concluding remarks on behalf of Old Town merchants and residents?
I would just like to thank everyone for coming and hanging in there to hear everyone's opinion. We think it's so important to be involved. Thank you.
Thanks, Pam. And thanks to my staff. Thanks to the team at Fern Hill. We hope you got something out of this. Again, this was a very good discussion. We kept it civil, but there's obviously some passionate feelings and deeply held beliefs, both in support and both in opposition. And the dialogue continues. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate your attention and have a good night.